Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Minds of Moria podcast. I'm your host, Michael, and today I have with me, here as always, both Trey and Andrew. And today we have a pretty fun episode. We are talking about a tournament that happened last week, a tournament that Trey ran and that I attended, the Texas Open. So, Trey, you want to walk us through the event that you did and some of the fun stuff that you did for that?
Okay, so first of all, it was a great idea. I love the Texas Open, guys. So we pretty much run an event every year of combined with a couple different game systems. So we get a big old convention hall, convention center, and we run a bunch of games. So this year we had 23 players total over the event, which I mean it wasn't bad, wasn't great. We had several players that literally just couldn't make it, which was sad because they always make it more fun and more entertaining. If we didn't have those, then we could have easily gotten much higher numbers. But we got some people from out of state, quite a few. Was it four from Louisiana, two from Oklahoma, one from Arizona?
Sounds right, yeah.
But yeah, it was a very, very, very fun day of events, or 2 days technically. So some of the special rules I did just to make things more interesting. I find a lot of the army lists to have just all out complete support heroes a little bit more boring. So I added some special rules on if your general kills the enemy general, they get like a little buff of their choice for the next game. Just like one of them was like reroll ones in the dual roll. One of them was like have your stand fast become 12 inches. It was stuff like that. So it was like little things that are very helpful. So it just incentivized heroes that could kill more, which I mean, in the current meta with like Aragorns and Balrogs, I mean, wasn't really an issue. But I don't was there. There was one Aragorn, I think. Um,
Um,
there was one in the Army of the Dead. I don't think
There
there
was
was
a
any
dead. I think
others.
there was one more in the Breaking of the Fellowship. Not that.
Yes,
Not.
there was a break in the
I don't think
Fellowship.
he had
Yep,
Andoril, but yeah.
yeah, yep. You're right. So even in terms of that, there was zero Men of the Wests, which was actually very surprising. But we had Radagast Alliance, the Eagles. Originally, we had the Beornings, but that dropped. We had lots of very fun lists. We had a Desolator of the North show up, Army of Erebor, Two Depths of Moria, a normal Moria, which actually I want to talk a lot about that list because I really enjoyed watching that list be played. And I've actually last night I spent a couple hours just writing up some lists of my own for that list, and so I will definitely be playing some of those lists soon. I was deeply inspired, but and then I mean I think we can get into this in a little bit, but I did my own version of the veto system, which I drastically prefer over the regular veto system, just because I mean one it's slightly different and new, but on the other hand it can skew games, and I think it does actually change a lot of the whole quote unquote rock paper scissors dynamic
Hmm.
because you can pretty much invert the rock paper scissors based on scenarios because the style of veto that we did was a complete mind game. So you could really have some really weird matchups. You could also erase some really good ones or really bad matchups, right? So it was really interesting in that regard.
Yeah, it was super fun. Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get into. But unfortunately, Andrew wasn't able to make this tournament, so I was the only one of us playing. And I thought about taking a lot of different stuff. Originally, I was gonna take a Sultan Lothlorien with like 60 some models. But honestly, Troy, one of the reasons I didn't was because of those, like if one model kills the general, then they get those bonuses. I was like, it's kind of boring. Like I'm not gonna, none of my guys are gonna get that except maybe a Warg Chief, which is kind of lame. So I ended up playing Host of the Dragon Emperor, which I'm sure we'll talk about a lot of the changes that it's gone through.
Yes.
But I got it last edition. I hadn't painted any of it up because, to be honest, I didn't want to play it last edition. And this edition, it has changed drastically. So the list I ended up taking because this was an 800 point event was the Dragon Emperor of Rune, and I took in his warband he had one Eastling Cataphract with drum, two Eastling Cataphracts, and nine Black Dragons with shield and pike. I took Rutabi. She had one warrior with shield, five warriors with shield and pike. Brogear with four Eastling archers, which I will talk about because those archers, oh, they put in the work this tournament. They saved me at least one game, and I think helped me in another as well. And then my fourth warband, my final one, was a Dragon Knight on foot with three Dragon Cult Acolytes and three Black Dragons with Pike. All in all, at 800, it came in at 32 models, 10 might with a Master of Battle. So, Andrew, you played against this list, and Trey, you saw this list play in the tournament, but from what I had seen, it's a very different build from anything that was last edition.
Yeah, I
So,
agree.
What list did you take when you faced it, Andrew? Did you face
I
with your
took
Balrog?
Last Alliance. No,
Less lines. Okay.
I took
How
last
he
did
last
how
alliance.
how did that game go?
that game
Uh,
that game was crazy.
yeah, I actually was. I think what was the scenario? I forgot the
It
scenario. Oh, it
was
was that one where it was like,
Sights of
yeah,
Power, I think.
Sights of Power. And then he got all his army on one side, and then I got most of my army on one side except for like captain's Orban. He had to spend one might just so he didn't deploy right next to his. Actually, no, he spent both of his might. I
I think
forgot
you
about
spent both
that.
because
Yeah,
you
he
rolled
spent
a
both might
curse too.
just cursed to. He spent both his might so he spent both not to deploy there. And then I was gonna go attack him, and then he put himself where either I go on one side and he just runs away on the other side, or I split and I try to like envelop him, and then he picked off on the Numenorians, and by the time that the elves got there, it was like the Numenorians were all dead, and then let me think. Oh, and then I ran Gilgalad into the Dragon Emperor. And the Dragon Emperor rolled like a three high, and then I rolled the six, but Dragon Emperor struck up, I think, to 10, right?
I think so. I think I was
I
slightly
think, yeah,
higher.
he struck up to 10. He rolled three high, and then he got his banner roll, and he rolled it to a six. And then Gilgalad took like three wounds, and I saved one of them for fate. So I couldn't do anything with the Dragon Emperor anymore. And then yeah, slowly my army died, and then he like took all the objectives, and Elven archers couldn't do anything with that
No. That list I was super scared because he had Gilgalad, he
game.
had Isildur with the ring, and a captain. And Gilgalad and Isildur could pick on any of my heroes, and he had fight six. So like all of my fight five was useless. That matchup was crazy. But that was the first time I'd run that list against someone. I had tried a couple practice games with what you would have run at last edition, which was the Emperor, Rutabi, Brogear, like 40 models. And it just wasn't working. Like I was messaging Trey back and forth, like this, I don't like this. It's awful. I hate this because a lot of the changes that it went through, you can't really play those three at 800. So some of the changes, because I want to talk about like the reasons that I took this specific list, because I would argue the Easterlings changed, are one of the armies that changed the most from the old edition to the new edition. So the Emperor, I'll start with. He went up in points from the FAQ. He's fight 7 now, which is nice. But the Palanquin got basically nerfed substantially. It's only a 6-inch banner now, and it gives reroll ones. But the fight value buff is tied to the Emperor himself, not the Palanquin, which is useful. And it's a 3-inch bubble. So for 200 points, I think he's still worth his value. And I'll get into in our games, we'll talk about how well he did in some matchups and how other matchups he wasn't really useful. The cataphract with the drum you always take. Always, always, always take a drum. I would even take it at like 500 points or below because that's what makes the Eastling list good is that mobility. And then another change, Rutabi went up in points, but she stayed about the same. Brogear stayed the same, but Tremor got nerfed substantially. So it's only a strength 4 hit now, and it's 100% resistible. Last edition, you could, if you positioned it right, you could draw a line over the combat, and it could knock everyone in the combat down, but only the people in the line could resist it. So you could essentially have a tremor that's irresistible, but they changed the wording of that, so anyone who's in combat and gets affected counts as the target and can resist it. So tremor got nerfed substantially. I only got tremor off once the whole tournament. But Broger is still a fantastic take. I would always try and take Broger because he's such a great offensive and defensive piece with the Blade Wrath and with the Tremor, with the Fury, with the Enchanted Blades. For Tabi, I would always take, especially at that high points. She really gets in her value. And then the reason I took the Dragon Knight is for a couple of reasons. First of all, I was really lacking in hero power because at 800, Brogier's not doing much. The Emperor is hard to position, so it was really like Rutabi was kind of my only hero, and I wasn't getting the hitting power I needed. So the Dragon Knight's fight 6 now, but he lost strike. He has 3 attacks. Granted, he's pretty weak, and he added 2 more might points. But the other reason I had him was because he adds the fight 5 bubble. Amdur, the Dragon Emperor, and him are the only ones that can give the fight bubble to the Dragon Easterlings. And that's just so big that I could basically split up my force and still have fight 5 in both areas. And I didn't mount him mainly because at 32 models at 800, I knew I was going to be outnumbered substantially, so I didn't really need the Dragon Knight on horse. His job was just to go and kill things and die, and I didn't want him on horse because he was going to die no matter what. And I think there's an argument to be made that he's much better on horse, but I didn't necessarily have the points for it and didn't really need him to be mounted. So, a couple of the other changes, the Easterling Warriors went through a big change because they separated the Black Dragon profile from the Easterling profile. So the Easterling models are now 1 more point expensive. They're more expensive than they were last edition, but they're fight 4 now, which is useful. And they have intelligence 6 plus, which is okay. It's not bad at all for evil men. And then the Black Dragon profile is exactly the same. It's just separate, and they have within 3 of the Black Dragon hero, which again is only Amdur, the Emperor, and Dragon Knight. They get fight 5. So it's gone through a lot of changes. And the biggest thing is the Emperor went up in points, Rutabi went up in points, the Eastling models went up in points, and the bonuses of the army, you don't get your free Black Dragon Warband anymore. The only bonuses you get are your heroes reroll a d6, and then the big one that I really focused on was if a model is supported by 2 other models, it gets +1 to wound. So if Rutabi has 2 pikes behind her, she gets +1 to wound. So the goal of my list was to take a bunch of heroes, put pikes behind them, give them +1 to wound, and go to town killing things. Which is not what these things were last edition. These things last edition were you have really good troops at pretty good numbers, they're just gonna outfight everything. But you can't really get enough models to make that work, especially at high points.
Okay, I have 2 questions. One, I do actually think Brogear is not the correct choice. I would take a War Priest personally, because then you get 2 more Black Dragons, and the War Priest does almost the exact same thing. So did you take Brogear because you like the Tremor that much, or you just like that extra 2 points of will and extra might? What was the thought process specifically with Brogear over a War Priest, or did you even like take that into consideration?
I didn't even think about the War Priest because 2 more models would have been okay, but it wouldn't have been a game changer. Brogier's Tremor, I did take. It's not it. I only got it off once, but it's such a great defensive piece as well because both the Dragon Knight and Rutabi have unyielding combat stance, and the Dragon Emperor can't be knocked prone. So if in a hypothetical situation, I got the Emperor into a really bad spot where there's like 8 models into him and Aragorn, I can throw a defensive Tremor and knock everyone over. So the
Mhm.
Tremors there are very useful, and for only like 20 points more, the extra might point and the extra 2 will and the extra fate. Like that's just 20 points right there. Plus the fact he's a more reliable caster, and sometimes that he gets the 6s back, he can cast Fury and still do other things. So like if I ever had the option between Brogear and a War Priest, I would always take Brogear because even if you don't get ever cast a Tremor, the fact that Tremor can just knock something down if you're in combat with like a Rutabi
Mhm.
and then she's still standing up with +1 to wound, it adds a lot of threat, and he comes into clutch a lot, which I'll talk about. But yeah, that's an interesting question.
Sure. And then the other thing is I mean you touched on the drum. I think the drum is what makes specifically the host of the Dragon Emperor one of I would still consider that the best Easterling list, simply because the drum is just what makes it such a good list. Because the way the Dragon Emperor plays now is you actually don't want to engage an entire army just battle line to battle line. You want to
Mhm.
drum around and engage, it's really judging how priority is going, and you need to engage in an area where you can put your entire army into half of theirs, decimate most of that half in a turn, and then from there on, they just don't have a chance even by attacking battle line to battle line. I think the issues and when you can lose is when you get your Rutabis magicked out early, or you get into that full on battle line versus battle line against a different and just as reliable battle line because you just don't have the numbers anymore. So I think you touched on that heavily, but I think the drum is what makes that list so good. But I love what you did, especially the Dragon Knight choice, I think is the correct choice. I think just having 3 reliable free attack heroes that are all fight 6 or higher is just that worth it.
Yeah. I I think this list is good, but I went into every matchup with I'm at a disadvantage in almost every game because I'm outnumbered. There's going to be bigger, badder monsters out there. Like the Emperor's good, but he's not like a Gwahir or an Aragorn or something that's really big. I went into every matchup like I'm at a disadvantage. It's up to my heroes, it's up to my drum to buy back that advantage. And yeah, without that drum, I it would not have gone well at all. So that's some of the stuff. The acolytes, I always would take 3. I wouldn't take any more personally. I found in every matchup, I think all of them died. Like they were useful for getting on some objectives in the 2 attacks, but the D4, like if they lost a fight, they were just dying. So
Mhm.
I preferred to take a bit more pikes, but I was glad I took 3, and they served me well in some cases. Trey, do you want to now talk about the veto system and how that works if we want to start getting into the games?
Yeah, so before Andrew starts questioning us and asking us how all the games went, I'll briefly break down how the veto system worked. So the veto system kind of worked like a fog of war-esque thing. So each person wrote down which scenario they wanted to do. So we just had a bunch of sticky notes everywhere. And you just wrote down whatever scenario you wanted of the 4 in a pool. Then you both revealed if they were the same, that was the scenario you played. If they were different, they were both discarded and you rolled a 50-50 between the remaining 2. So obviously, this is just weird because the Balrog player in the Maelstrom mission could easily think, what's the one mission I am practically unbeatable in? Well, it's Hold Ground. So what are they probably going to discard? Hold Ground. If I also pick Hold Ground, guess what we're playing? Hold Ground, right? So there's this whole different aspect of the game of, oh, I've got a Sauron. We're in the killing pool. Yeah, I should be really good at Contest of Champions. Oh, their biggest hero is, oh wow, a Drew's Hag and Moria. Oh yeah, this will be easy. Yeah, it's like you can easily manipulate it, but the other person can also read your manipulation theoretically and like try to block it. It's literally just a mind game within a mind game, but it is so fun. And I think because there's just that chance of the skew going heavily in one direction because of scenarios, it can completely reverse some of these great lists and what they can do in these scenarios traditionally because now you could end up playing something that is actually really bad for a Balrog Legion, just simply based on, well, there's the chance if I pick this really bad one, he also picks it, and then we end up playing it. So they might avoid it and rely on that 50-50 roll off. And then if the 50-50 roll off goes that way, then they're still playing a scenario that is really bad for them, and thus makes this list vastly less than it could be in a regular veto system. So I think it was something definitely different, but I really liked the way it turned out.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I played it. I think we knew that it was happening like a month or two. So all
Yeah.
of my practice games up till then was playing with it, and it's super fun. And I might be tempted to play all my practice games in that veto system. So I really enjoyed it. I don't know if for bigger tournaments,
Bigger tournaments, it gets much tougher. Like
and
once
it's
you
harder
exceed
too.
35 players, really, it's just really hard to manage that and get everybody across on the same page. Because the nice thing was, I think at least half the people read the players pack. So like half the people knew exactly what was going on,
Yeah.
everything, and then half the people I was having to explain it to. So that's where it's like if you get over 35 people, it can get very difficult. Which that was the other
Mhm.
nice thing is like all of the army general rules that I was describing earlier. I was not sitting there reminding people these are in there. I just told people when I announced it, I was like, there are special rules in the player pack. If you read it, you can use them. And so I was just like, during the entire event, I wasn't going around telling people, remember, if this happens, you get this, pick your choice. People
Mhm.
kept coming to me and asking, is this a thing? I was like, you obviously didn't read the player pack. Yes,
Like,
that's a thing.
I really like it, and in all the games I played, both of us wrote it down and both showed each other. Like there wasn't really any like, ooh, I lied about it. Like there wasn't any of that. So I think it went really well. Andrew, you had some experience playing with it too. What are your thoughts on it?
I I like the video thing, I can't lie. But like I don't like thinking like that. It makes my head hurt. I just want to go and play. But I actually liked it. All right, so round one of the tournament. So Trey, you didn't play because you
I
were obviously
I
hosting.
played I
You
played
played
day two
second day,
as a
right?
fill-in for
All
the
right.
ringer.
So
So
round one of the tournament. What was the pool?
it was pool four, I
4.
believe.
Four. All right, Michael. So I guess here's your stage now.
Okay. Yeah, this game was crazy. So it was pool 4, which I don't mind. It's like destroy the supplies. I'm trying to remember the other ones, like seize the prizes, some of these other weird ones. And I was playing against Jacob, who was fairly like he was only a year into Middle Earth, but was pretty experienced in other wargaming, and he was taking Return of the King spam. So Aragorn, Legolas, King of the Dead, 29 models in total, no horses. And I looked at that and went, hmm, that's interesting. I think in terms of matchup, I might have a slight advantage because I outnumber him by 3. Brogear has
Hmm.
the Fury, so I don't have to worry about that. He's fast. I also have the drums, so I'm pretty fast too, and my big heroes can match his big heroes. But
Hmm.
sometimes where a matchup favors you, scenario and more importantly, the board does not. So what we ended up vetoing in was destroy the supplies, which I'm pretty familiar with. We're all pretty familiar with. It was played a lot during the
Yeah.
first couple months of the edition. But the board was a board that he did himself. We might send up pictures of it later. It was a weathertop board,
Beautiful, beautiful
but it
weathertop
had
board.
tons of scatter terrain, tons of forests here, and then in the middle was probably like this 12-inch by 12-inch and like 4 inches tall weather top. Just beautifully done. But the way Destroy the Supplies worked, I basically had 2 lanes to go around, but he's all
Hmm.
dead people, so he can just walk through. He did. He
Oh.
walked right over Weathertop, and there was basically nothing I could do. So deployment, I definitely messed up here on deployment. On one side, I put the Dragon Emperor and Brogear. The other side, I put Rutabi and the Dragon Knight, which is normally how I'm going to deploy those two, just to space out warbands. But I had to deploy them basically around the sides of Weathertop because I only had 2 lanes to run through. He deployed Legolas all the way on the one side, matching the Dragon Emperor, and then deployed Aragorn and the King, matching Rutabi and the Dragon Knight. And I went, that's not good because Dragonite, Ratabi. I need the Emperor over there. I need Broger over there for the Fury and just generally causing a problem for Aragorn. So first turn he called him Arched. He moves 11 inches, sends up basically 2/3 of his army on one side of the very far left flank, and on the right flank he has
Hmm.
Legolas like 5 or 6 dead dudes that are slowly walking up. I have to quick rearrange. I flick the Dragon Emperor, I flick Brogear over to the flank with Aragorn, send the Dragon Knight back. So I have
Hmm.
Emperor, Rutabi, Brogear, probably like again 2/3 of my army, and then I send my flank force, his 4 archers, my 3 cataphracts, and 6 pikemen over against Legolas and like the 6 dead. I was like, this is gonna be easy. He didn't leave any guards for his destroy the supplies, so I was like, I'm just gonna drum right past him. I'm gonna get on the supplies. I'm gonna destroy him. And then turn 2, I lost priority, so I kind of did the same thing and marched up. And this is where he really got me because he split his force. He sent probably half of the dudes with Aragorn and the King of the Dead up on top of Weathertop. So now there's like 10 dudes on Weathertop looking down on my central objective, and then my objective on the flank where all of my flank force had basically moved up. He'd move his 5 dead guys around the flank, and now
Hmm.
had 10 dudes. So he had like 15 dudes threatening 2 of my objectives already. So I had to send the archers back. I had to send the cataphracts back. Legolas was picking off cataphracts, which is super annoying. And then it got really interesting. The lines clashed on the side where I had Rutabi, I had Dragon Emperor, I had Brogyr. Threw up the Fury pretty easily. And that first turn, like Aragorn called the combat, threw a Blade Wrath on Rutabi. She combated, threw two dead dudes into two other two dead dudes. Didn't kill them,
Mm-hmm.
but still getting two dead dudes. Aragorn killed two dudes. But I was on that side, I was winning because I had the Fury and I had the pikes. So I put my guy and put two pikes behind it. Front guy with two hands, so he's getting +2 to wound. And I was cutting
Ooh.
through the dead dude pretty nice. But it really cost me because those 10 dudes, he had one priority there previously, so was he able to tag some of my flank force and got a dude
Mm-hmm.
into my objective and was already threatening my central objective. Which is really annoying because at that point, all I had moving up towards his objectives was just four Eastlings with Pike and a drum. And he destroyed that objective. I was like, okay. And then this is really where the next turn went crazy because I had that. So I had already had one of my supplies destroyed. So I retreated like for the four or
Yeah.
five guys I had left because he kept winning priority the entire time. The Dragon Knight and dudes surrounded the middle objective, and then my four pikemen and the Cataphract march up to meet Legolas, but he threw some dead dudes back.
Mm-hmm.
Over on the main battle lines, I call him move because he had Aragorn kind of on the steps of Weathertop, but he didn't think the Dragon Emperor could get into him, but he could. So I don't remember if he countered or if I won, but the Dragon Emperor
Uh-huh.
got in. And I threw Blade Wrath on the Dragon Emperor, and so that turned Dragon Emperor versus Aragorn. Rutabi went in, did some other stuff, and in combat, he was winning a lot of the combats at this point. It was just one on one over on the flanks where I had my flank force. He'd just be like, I have a 6. And I was like, okay, I rolled a 5. And he'd be like, ooh, I'm going to have a 4. You're dead. And I was like, but Legolas was reliably killing dudes. And then the Emperor versus Aragorn. And he was kind of new to Lord of the Rings in terms of army list,
Mm-hmm.
so he didn't know too much about mine. I explained to the best of my abilities at the beginning. But he didn't strike with Aragorn, and I didn't strike
Mm-hmm.
with the Emperor. So it was just a classic fight 7 roll off. Won the roll off on the Elven Blade. I rolled a 3, but because we both have an Elven Blade, I won that. And I looked
Mm-hmm.
over and everyone's like, yeah, I'm defense 5. I was like, I'm winning you on 4s. I have 3 strikes from the Emperor, 6 strikes from the Palanquin, 8 wounds. Dead Aragorn.
Cool.
Which helped because that turn he was able to get a model into my central objective and the Dragon Knight combated through a dead dude into that model. And this is where some of the controversy between us kind of started. Because at the beginning, I was like, I play by intentions. If you state that, that's what we're going by. But what I think I didn't mean is, oh, I've already finished my move phase. This guy was meant to be here. But what I play by is you state your intention. So he's meant to be outside 6 inches. I will rule that. You can't go back and change that. So, for example, there was a couple times later on where I had in that specific combat, he thought he had two guys in. Clearly, he only had one guy in. He tried to get the second guy in and was like, he's not in. I'm sorry, that's your intention, but you didn't state that. So that's why he was able to get a combat. And I was pretty nervous here because I was down. My flank force was basically destroyed, so I had no offensive power. Yeah, I killed Aragorn, but I already had supply destroyed, and my second supply was almost already falling. And so that third turn, again, more controversy where I basically did the 3 models around the objective. I made sure no one could get in. I started moving somewhere else, and then when I came back, he'd gotten a model into the objective, and I was like, "That's not possible." I'd blocked that off. Well, he was like, "Well, you didn't do it right." I thought I did it right. Again, more controversy, but that supply ended up being destroyed. And then over on the flank where I'd killed Aragorn, I was killing some dead dudes, but he had had a dude climb a cliff. And the objective was right at the bottom of this cliff. The dude climbed down right into the cliff where I couldn't physically get a model into him because he was using the supply as a shield marker. And Brogyr was against the King of the Dead. So I couldn't get a model into him. I tried a last chance Daisy heroic combat where the Emperor combated into Rutabi, who Rutabi combated into Brogyr. Brogyr called a combat off the King of the Dead, but we're both fight 6. He rolled a 6, he won the roll off, and all 3 of my objectives were destroyed. And I was like, this is not good. This is really not good. Like, we have an hour left. I'm losing models, he's losing models. At that point, I think we had both broken. I was like, I need to do something, and I need to do something now. So what I had is that flank where Aragorn was on. I had basically completely outnumbered him, and I was just running my troops forward because there was no need to project any more objectives. And this is really where the Emperor's Standfast came in clutch, because his battle-wide stand field affects all heroes. I wasn't running away when I was broken. He wasn't running away when he was broken. So I think the game went on for like 10 more turns. And every turn, every single one of my models, hero or not, shielded. And I think there was a point for like 4 turns where he killed one dude. Like he won one fight.
Wow.
Because I was higher fight
That's
value, I was just shielding. I needed time to get to those objectives. So eventually I was able to sweep up. I got and tagged one of his objective because again he didn't have any defenders. At this point he was out of might. I was winning a lot of priorities and I had a lot of might still left. But I was still down, and this is where the archer comes in. There was one lone Eastling archer who was walking up on the very far side of the flank where Legolas was.
hmm
Legolas was against one dude. He had sent his dead dude with a banner because he had a dude with a banner, but he wasn't in base contact with anyone. And the Eastling archer looked over there and was like, why not? I'm just not going to move this turn. We'll see. Legolas got to shoot first. So Legolas put 3 shots into the Eastling archer, hit with all 3, didn't wound, couldn't even might them. Eastling archer was like, all right, that's not bad. What do I need? Oh, it's a dead banner with a shield. 4s to hit. Hit. 6s by 5 to wound. 6 by 5. Take him off. Took out the dead banner, which is, there are up to 4 VPs for banner VPs. And because the Emperor counts as a banner, that essentially gave me 4 more VPs. And then the last turn, right before he quartered me, I swung 1 model within range of his central objective, which he didn't know about the points being if you have models within the supply marker, but you don't destroy it, you get VPs. So he destroyed 3 of my supplies when the game ended, and he destroyed more than me, and he broke me, so it gave him 11. But I killed his leader, I broke him, destroyed one of his supplies, had more models within, and then up to 4 VPs for the banner, and I won 13 to 11, which was an absolutely crazy game that I was sweating because he was a new player. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna help you here. I'm gonna try and explain some things. And then I was getting crushed, and I was like, wait a second, I just lost all 3 objectives. This is not going well.
Uh-huh.
And because of the ability that all my guys can shield, because of the stand fast, he wasn't running away, I wasn't running away, and that ultimately ended to me winning. I don't know, like I don't feel like I should have won that game. I made a lot of mistakes early. I underestimated the dead and that 8-inch move through, but yeah, that was a pretty crazy game. And Trey watched bits of it, so he has, I'm sure, some
Yeah.
comments as well.
Yes, I actually have a lot of comments. So of all of the games of round one, that was the one I was like most excited for. So like all of the rounds, I could like pick out a game that I was like, this one is just awesome. And so that first round, it was that game. I mean, one, you all were on a beautiful, gorgeous board. It was the Dead versus the Easterlings. There was quite a bit of difficult terrain that he ignores, and you're affected by all of it. And so it was just really interesting to see. I also, as soon as I saw the scenario, I was like, oh, this is going to be very fun because he's got the marching dead, you've got your drum. So in terms of movement, y'all are both crazy fast. I saw y'all's deployments, and I would completely agree. He definitely outdid you on the deployment side. But on the other side, it's like if you had fought him further up, you wouldn't have had quite as good of a choke, which kind of would have helped, but also would have been bad in terms of he had a lot of dead guys. And so a choke kind of helped with your higher fight value, but it also did allow him to pretty much send the guys that weren't able to get in combat around the flanks up on these terrain pieces, which, I mean, one note, again, yeah, he was slightly newer. He knew his own list pretty well. He just didn't know your list well. So that by newer, he just didn't know all of the lists in the game. Like
Yeah,
I,
he
I
was
watched
really
a lot of
good.
his games. He was very good. I mean, one thing I am 99% sure he did play incorrectly, which again, I'm not one of those judges that will intercede and say y'all are playing this wrong. Because there's one judge and there's like 12 tables. I'm not able to go around to each table and say, oh, y'all aren't playing this little thing wrong. So I'm not making any judging rulings unless I'm asked. Because I'm pretty sure moving up terrain, you still count the inches moving up, which from what I was seeing, that wasn't the way y'all were playing it. Specifically like him with like the movement, which again, as long as y'all are both fine with it, like it is what it is, right? And I know that came up later that somebody asked about that, and so I was like, yeah, that's the way it is. Now they asked after like the final round, so I was just like, yeah. But again, that's a minor detail, and that game was super interesting to watch. And after he destroyed those 3 supply markers, I was like, you're really gonna need to pull something out of the bag. And then I came back over and the banner's just gone, and I was like, well, I'm pretty sure you did. But yeah, that was very entertaining to watch.
Yeah, that I'm so glad I took those Eastling Archers. I think I'll mention them in every game because that was the game they won me. If that Eastling Archer did not hit and kill that banner after being shot by Legolas. So that was a really good one. But it was kind of a wake-up call, like, okay, this is not gonna be easy. I gotta work to get these wins. And just to emphasize how good of a player he was playing on the second top table last round.
Yeah.
Unfortunately lost that round. But
That
like when
game
I
was
mean
also super interesting.
yeah. When I mean new, I
But
don't mean like he knew tactics and he knew wargaming and he knew his army. I think the only big misplay he had was Aragorn. Like even if he kind of had him out of position, didn't even strike.
yeah, I would have
And
defensed.
yeah, at that point, like even defensing, like I killed full stat Aragorn. He did not spend a single resource.
That was
So
something. Watching his games, he very rarely spent his physical stats. Which on the one hand, for a newer player, that's actually not necessarily a bad thing, especially considering the success he was having. I mean, yeah, through that game, I saw a lot of really good things. I mean, like you pointed out with like resources on Aragorn being full might, just if you're watching this, bro, don't be afraid to use Aragorn's first 2 points of might haphazardly, if you will. Like create some chaos, create some unpredictability. If you just use his free might for move, if you really need it, and then call a combat, don't be afraid to just blow a point of might to get a second kill and then combat off of that. Like back when I used to run Men of the West last edition, I would use his first 2 points of might and his free to assure 4 kills the first turn. I would run into two guys, call a combat with his free might, and then use up to 2 might to get those first 2 kills, go into two more guys and just get more kills. Right. After that, you've created a bit of a momentum shift. You've created some chaos. You've created something that they probably didn't expect you to do, which is just blow 3 might on the first turn. And then watching them react is just such a joy. Like that, it brings me so much joy just to see people just react to watching me go and call a combat and kill a bunch of guys. Now on that list, I also had two other fight six, 3 attack heroes that would also do the exact same thing, and if needed be, use all of their might to do it, because then they can be down 10 to 12 models in the first turn. And then it's like, well, now you're facing a 3 fight 6 heroes, a bunch of fight 4 guys that can get up to fight 5, and it was just such an interesting style, right? So don't be afraid to create some chaos. Use your resources at least for a few games. Try to use them a bit more. Be a bit more harsh with them or overreaching, if you will, and just see how it goes. Because taking risks isn't always a bad thing, and using your resources, I mean, they're there so you can use them, right? That would be my words of advice after seeing that game and many of the other games. You've got the resources, use them.
but props to you, bro. Like I should not have won that game. I just shouldn't have. You
Yeah.
played really well. So
And then, I mean, you went from there, went undefeated until the last round, and even then, you still ended up top half easily. And
yeah.
even that game was extremely close. Like just watching that game, it was crazy cool to watch. I mean, watching the Shadows of Angmar with 5 Orc Shamans, 2 Barrow-wights, and Gullivar take on the Army of the Dead, like that was really cool just to watch happen and play out, because that was a really cool matchup.
All right. So I guess round two. What was the pool?
Pool 2, I believe it was Pool 5.
Pool five.
Mhm.
Yes.
All right. So again, Michael.
Alrighty. So if you thought last game was close, this game is insane. And I say
This
this
game?
lightly. This game might be the best game I have ever played, and I still almost lost. So the person I was playing against was Spencer, and he was running Birder's Horde. So he had Birder, two Hill Trolls, a Wildwark Chieftain with a whole warband of Cav, two captains, 55 models, and we're in pool five. It ended up vetoing into Reconnoiter. So I was up against an army that could ambush on the board and walk their biggest leader warband off. He had double
Mhm.
march, he had Cav, he outnumbered me by 20. It was not looking good. But I think the only slight advantage I had was the board. So the board itself was like this Dwarrow board with all these big pillars, but there was really only like four pieces. So we came over, Trey made the correct ruling based on the designer's note that based on Reconnoiter, you cannot enter from the board any other side or backboard edge. You can only enter from your board edge. However, you still can ambush. So there were 4 pieces of terrain we ruled he could ambush. There was this really big flat one that was like 12 inches wide on one side of the board. There was one about kind of in the middle of this big building all the way over to the left, and these 2 smaller buildings all the way at the back of the other side of the board. So whichever board half you chose, Birder and like 15 models could just smack there and walk off the board. So I got to pick board edges, and I unfortunately did the annoying thing where I was like, I want that board edge with the one terrain piece.
Hmm.
And so I went into this with a pretty simple strategy. I am not going to stop his models from getting off. My job is to mitigate how many models get off, but in order to win this game, I need to get models off. I can try and break him, that's not really worth much. I can try and go for Birder, that's going to be hard. I need to get models off. So how? So my main plan was the Dragon Emperor. I'm going to get him off the board. He counts as 6 models. If he dismounts, that's 9. We deployed. He spent a point of mine on the captain, and I was already like, ooh, he knows what he's doing. So both his captains came on, and his warg chieftain came on. Obviously, Birder he set to the side for the ambushing rule. All of my warbands came on except Brogear, and I just surrounded this giant terrain piece. I stuck Rutabi's warband, I stuck the Dragon Knight's warband, I stuck some of the Cav, all in this terrain feature so he couldn't enter in because that was my first goal was to make sure Birder would not go 2 inches away from my board edge. And what I wanted him to do, which he ended up doing, was to deploy in the big terrain piece that was kind of in the middle, but all the way over on the left. Now, what he did when he deployed is he had his 2 captains come in the middle, but all the way on the right, he had his Cav warband. And I was already like, this is not good. I have to defend the left flank, I have to defend the right flank. So I sent the Emperor and drummed up him and 6 Black Dragon warriors all the way up to meet this Cav warband. All the rest stayed back to protect this terrain objective. Second turn, he called a march with a captain, and I was like, oh, this is really not good. So he marched up his central force, and the cavalry warband was already at the halfway point. I again did some drumming. Broger came on, but the majority of my force had to surround this terrain objective to make sure he couldn't get on it. The Dragon Emperor went up with his 6 Dragon Knights, and the third turn is where things really got interesting because the Dragon Emperor was in range of the Warg Chieftain, and of course I drummed, but I can move first. So I had priority. I chose to, or I think he had priority. He moved the Warg Chieftain up first. That's why he was within 6 inches. And so the Dragon Emperor was like, there's a Warg Chieftain, there's these Cav, and they're in this little choke point where you could probably only get 2 Cav bases. And it was basically his Cav could go in 2 ways. It could skirt around on the edge of the board, and there was no way I would stopping them, or they could go towards the middle. My plan was to try and direct him towards the middle so I could handle his Cav more easily. So the Dragon Emperor went up into the Warg Chieftain. I got a Cav model in that combat as well, and then marched my 6 Easterlings as far as close, not even straight, just directly towards that side of the board edge to prevent
Hmm.
any Cav from running around. And then that turn, at the end of his move phase, at the end of both of our move phases, Birder deployed in that terrain feature. So there's this Cav warband on the very right flank, Birder and 15 models on the left flank, and like 30 orcs and captains in the middle flank. And basically my whole army is around this like little terrain feature, not 2 inches off my board edge. So that turn is where I started to get really worried because I called a combat against the Warg Chief with the
Hmm.
Emperor and with my dude. And the Emperor had killed Aragorn last turn, so his special bonus was rerolling once in the dual roll. So Warg Chief rolled his dice, he got a 6. I was like, whatever, that's fine. I have 2 Cataphract dice, roll the 4 high. Dragon Emperor, roll the 3 high. He was like, that's fine. I have a banner, I have my bonus from the reroll ones, and I have my Easterling bonus. Let me reroll these 3 dice into a 4. 2 might points. Blew all his might in one
Ooh.
combat, killed the Warg Chief, combated into 2 more Wargs, rolled a 3 high, reroll this 3 dice into another 3 high, and he was like, fine. So Dragon Emperor was on the flank, out of might, but I had taken out his Warg Chieftain, and he kind of put his Cav in a dilemma. Next turn, he got priority. He ran his Cav exactly where I didn't want them to go, all around the way to the edge. Trapped the
Mhm.
Dragon Emperor, and Berta's horde started moving forward. Berta kind of moved a little bit towards the middle. I had positioned the drum perfectly, so the Dragon Knight and 4 Dragon Colt, 4 of the not the Colt Acolytes, the
The
Pikemen.
acolytes. Oh, the
I
pigment.
think an Acolyte and some Pikemen. And they grabbed the drum and marched directly towards the left flank to try and counter the 15 dudes in Birder. The rest of my force kind of gathered up from there, So it was the Dragon Emperor on one flank with 6 pikemen, the Dragon Knight with some pikemen, and then like Rutabi and Broger in the middle with like 4 archers, 2 or 3 acolytes, a cav, couple pikes against Burner, 3 trolls, and like 30 orcs. I was like, oh, I don't even know how this is doing. And at this point, I already know I was going to roll terrible from the Dragon Emperor. I think I won priority again. I was able to get my models just to the side of the board edge. So you had like 15 orcs from Burder's Warband that just were kind of stuck in this choke point where between the board edge and the building, there was only 3 models wide. So my 3 pikes went there, and my Dragon Knight tried to skirt back towards the main combat. I created the flimsiest wall in the world in the middle of like a couple archers, a couple pikemen, and Rutabi. It's this Orc horde is coming towards me. I was losing fights against cavalry that I had charged. So I had like 2 dice and a banner, and he'd win and just killed him. And I was like, why? But the hardest part was basically his whole army had passed the Dragon Emperor, and all the cav had ran by it. So the Dragon Emperor had a really big decision, and this is one of the things I'm really happy about. He could either go back towards the main battle, or he could just spend 3 or 4 turns doing absolutely nothing, going towards the board edge. And at this point, Spencer was very, very particular with his movement. He was very good, but he was playing slow. And I estimated that maybe there was like 4 or 5 turns left. If I put the Dragon Emperor in that battle, he's never getting off. So the Dragon Emperor marched in open space the entire rest of the game and never saw another combat. But at this point, I was just shielding to save my life. My archer put a wound on a hill troll, which was super cool. So go archers. Brogier threw, at this point, he had basically his 3 trolls in his line already in my face. I had killed some of his cav warband, but at this point it was just 2 cav and 3 dragon Easterling warriors, like 10 inches away from the board edge on the right flank. All the way over on the left flank, my flank was holding, but the Dragon Knight was surrounded by like 10 orcs a turn and was like shielding for his life, holding back a doorway. And then Brogier, through a channel, cast a tremor. Because at this point, he had marched with his captains, he spent a might. So he had 1 might on his captain, his war chief was dead. Bird only had 3 might left. So he only had 4 might on the table. And my goal with this tremor, it hit Birder and it hit a troll. It would knock both of them down. But I wanted him to spend might. He'd put 2 dice to the resist test, rolled a 6, spent 2 might, and I went, yes. That's exactly what I want, because a Birder with 3 might is getting off the board. Birder with 1 might is not. At this point, I was just losing combats, but somehow surviving. Rutabi was like fighting this hill troll and like losing and dying. Like she was just taking 2 or 3 wounds every turn. Brogier got barged into from Birder and then rolled a 6, and Birder didn't win, and Brogier was like, back away. But then later a hill troll got into him and killed him. I got lucky, like the last 2 or 3 turns, I was winning priority, so I was tagging the cavalry models, preventing them from going off. The left flank, I was just shielding for my life, hoping that this flank would hold. And I was able to get my drummer all the way up in range of the Dragon Emperor. In the last turn, with like 10 minutes left, I got it in range, barely half an inch. Got the Dragon Emperor, got the drummer off. And at this point, I already broken for a couple turns. I was like barely surviving. And then a bunch of my models ran away the last turn. I had a chance to tag a troll with a courage chest, failed it. So a troll got off the board, but Birder didn't get off the board. I killed his remaining cavalry models that were alive. And about 25 orcs were like 3 inches off the board edge, and the game timed out. And I got 7 models off from the Dragon Emperor and the drum. He got 3 models from the troll, so that gave me 8 VPs. I got a hero off, which gave me 9, and he got 3 for breaking me without being broken. So I won that game 9-3, which was barely enough for a major, and I beat Birder's Horde in Reconnoiter when they outnumbered me by 20 models with March and Cavalry.
That's crazy.
And yeah, we talked a little bit about after the game. I don't think there was anything. Maybe I think he was sometimes a bit passive with maybe his might or maybe with his trolls. But I don't think there was much Spencer could have done. I came up to him at about halfway through the game. At the end of the game, I was like, I knew that there was only going to be this many turns left. My whole strategy was, I need to stop you from getting off there. I need the Emperor off. If you had played a little bit faster, the game would have been over. And there was a similar situation later, but I played that down where I was counting every second and every model and every combat, and was just
Wow.
able to fight a model like a 32 model army across a literal 48-inch battle. So it was crazy, bro. That game had me sweating so much, and I was rolling awfully that whole game too.
That's
Oh,
actually
yeah,
crazy.
just to add a bit to that, I have noticed because I had a game similar to that when we were down in College Station for our final grand tournament last year, and I was playing Gray Company. So that list, especially in my hands, I run around and I kite for days, even if I'm not really accomplishing much in it. It's just the threat of those 14 bow shots with 20 points of might. It's scary, right? And so I would just run around, do that all game, and then I would engage late. And I had one game against a player who was newer, and so they moved slightly slower, right? And so after like the first two turns, I was like, we've already blown an hour. I need to run in now. It might not go as good for me because this list likes the amount of time and amount of turns it normally gets to be able to function at a high capacity. But I was like, you know what? I've this is the only way because it was an objective scenario and all of the objectives were on the middle. And so I was like, I literally have to engage if I want to have a chance. And so I just ran in. Luckily, because I was doing all of that shooting, he hit all of his dwarven heroes behind his lines. So I was able to pretty much just fight just dwarves, no heroes for like 3 turns by just finagling it, setting it up so that there was no possible way with terrain and the way he'd set up that his heroes could get in. And I ended up crushing him because I pretty much just, in those turns, I ran forward, met him on the middle line, and then forced him off the middle line, held the objectives, and killed most of his heroes. And so it's just like practicing how to play a quick paced game means a lot. Because even at Nova, there were several games where it was slower than I ever expected. And then there were some games where it was like they were playing. A lot of people would start slow and then they would pick up their pace because I play at a very high pace. I've gotten that comment a lot, but I love moving super fast, and I think that is something that is very useful because if you're moving fast, it puts pressure because a lot of people when I play them, they'll be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm moving really slow," right? If you
Hmm.
keep playing at that fast pace, they start to play at that same pace normally, which then means because that's not the pace they normally play at, they're more prone to make mistakes, one, and two, you get more turns to accomplish what you want. And so it's just I would suggest to all of the players that play slower. Here's the thing: movement is very important, but there is also that whole thing of when you're moving, rather than sitting there and taking an extra 60 seconds to measure to the millimeter, you can just clarify with your opponent, hey, I'm pretty sure this is outside of 8 inches if it's a goat rider, outside of 6 inches if you don't want to engage an airborne, right? Is this fine? And if they say, oh, move it back a millimeter, then you're like, perfect, move it back a millimeter. Now,
Yep.
obviously, you don't just leave it where it is, and then later when they charge you, you go, oh, actually, that wasn't my intention. It's you can shave off time by just pretty much clarifying with your opponent. This is the intent. I'm pretty sure it's around there. It's not to the millimeter. Do you care? Right.
Yeah.
And even like up at Nova, I did that a lot. And people weren't like, no, you need to measure it to the millimeter. It was like, as long as you're clarifying beforehand your intent, everything goes.
Mhm.
I'd say between like Andrew, Trey, and I, we all play pretty fast.
Yes.
So that's something we have to consider, and something I had. We'll talk about this a lot more in round five. That I was glad I was able to play this game out to exactly the amount of turns it needed. Like if it had played one more turn, I wouldn't have won. If it played one less turn, I wouldn't have won. So yeah, playing in that time limit because I think in this game, despite the fact it was Reconnoiter, I think we probably only got 12 or so turns in a like 2.5 hour period. Versus if I was playing any one of you, we could easily gotten 20 or 30 turns. Like we move pretty fast. So that was one thing
Yep.
I was really happy about this game that I did. So
All right. So round three. Um, what was the what do you call? What was the
Pool.
like pool?
It
it
was
was pool six.
pool. Yes.
Unfortunately, Troy had to leave for a basketball final, so I was actually like helping Tio with this tournament, whatever.
Yes.
But specifically, there's a couple things that went into this game. That last game I played was extremely stressful, and
Mhm.
there was like a 5 or 10 minute break because we went to full time between the next round, and I was pretty tired. And historically, I am horrendous in round threes. I think this year I have not won a round three the entire year. So
Well,
we'll
well,
see.
this
We'll
is
see
the
if
only
that
event
changes.
that is the only event you've played this year.
Oh well, this year. All right. So what it ended up being was pool six, and I was playing against Patrick from Arizona, who I had chatted a bit with before, and he knew the rules really well. Like he knows his tactics, he knows his rules. Very, very experienced player. Even talking with him during the game, he owns every army, every GW model. Like this player is legit. And he was running a very weird list, which I'm sure we'll talk about a lot. Is he was running Legions of Mordor, which was the Witch King on Fell Beast with the crown and the blade, Amdur and Raza, and had a warband of Haradrim, warband of Eastling, warband of Morannon. Was at like 34-ish models.
It was
So
35. Yeah.
35, yeah. And again, I don't think my army plays too bad into this because I have some big heroes, but what I really did not like was the Witch King because the Dragon Knight has absolutely no will and no strike. Rutabi only has 2 will, and it's a flying monster, so I gotta protect my backlines, and I don't have the models to do that. So I think this matchup can go either way. The pool, however, was not great because, again, it's unique scenarios. It's a lot about killing heroes. All of his heroes have strike, and they're all pretty reliable. I have like a Brogier, a Dragon Knight, even Rutabi is pretty susceptible. So my heroes were a little weaker, but we ended up thankfully vetoing into Convergence, which I was fine with because I'm pretty fast and my heroes can die and it doesn't 100% matter. However, this game I played really sloppily. I think I was a little bit nervous in this game, but also I was pretty tired. So I deployed the same thing I always do when my warband split up. I put the Dragon Emperor and Brogier in one spot, Rutabi and the Dragon Knight in the other to about even out the warbands. First turn I drummed and didn't think anything of it, kind of put the drummer a little bit behind my lines. But the Witch King came forward, threw a compel on the drummer, was in range, and I went, oh shoot. Because we looked through the rules, and I'm pretty sure this is the correct ruling. I didn't see anything to the contrary, and it seemed pretty clear that if you drum, that drum is added to your movement. So he compelled the drummer a full 7.5 inches, charged the drummer with the Witch King. I was like, that's a big misplay. So I should have blocked that out and killed the drummer. And then next turn, I think he was out of range of all my dudes because of the compel. So he flew over and like tried to kill 2 archers that turn. And that's something that he did really well is my army and my greatest fear with this army is a burnout tactic. Because again, my army likes sometimes to have turns, but if your heroes are killing, if I lose 4 or even 6 troops a turn, it's not good. Because especially against a flying monster, I need to protect Brogier, I need to protect the objective holders. I don't have the models to do that and win a fight. Unfortunately, the Witch King went over, killed some more dudes. He had to spend a might point for it, but I was like, great, good job, archers. You forced out a might point. Another thing the archers did. And then I was able to pick up 2 of the objectives just right off the bat. I got one with a pikeman and one with another pikeman. And then Amdur and Raza, who were on one side, he deployed his Morannons and the Witch King on the other side. Morannons were just kind of sitting there, like, kind of moving forward. And Raza and Amdur was pushing hard on the left flank. Raza was coming around to the back of the Dragon Emperor. But there was an objective I could have gone for. I didn't go for it. Ended up getting 3 objectives in the first couple turns. Witch King was able to do a compel, come around a building, tag the model with the objective, and kill it. And at this point, this is where the transfix part of the heirloom really screwed me over because my one pikeman over there got transfixed and completely messed up my lines. And so he was able to get some traps, and his Morannons were killing better than my Easterlings because the Dragon Emperor was staying back to protect Brogier because he provided really that giant base that I needed to make sure Witch King couldn't get in Brogier. And he was just killing more models with the strength value, with the +1 fight. So I wasn't getting my fight value bubble. And I don't think his archers did anything the whole game. They might have killed one dude. I think they took out a horse or something. But this is where it really surprised me because to this game, my strategy was pick up the objectives, but the thing I needed to kill was the Witch King. Because if the Witch King was able to get anywhere near Rutabi and the Dragon Knight, I would have been killed. So because the Witch King killed that model, he was within 6 of the Dragon Emperor, which I positioned on purpose. So next turn, I called a move. He didn't counter. And I was like, It's weird. Okay. I'll just tag the Witch King with my Fight 7 Dragon Emperor. Threw a Blade Wrath on him, but because the Dragon Emperor was out, Brogyr was kind of in the middle, and Amdur was able to get into Brogyr. And I was like, that's fine. I'm trading a 250 point Witch King leader for an 80 something point Brogyr. I'm totally cool with that. But this is where I really started to make mistakes. Again, my lines were not as good as they wanted because my dude got transfixed again, which is super annoying. So I had to protect him, and that was hard because Amdur was out basically in the open, and he got Raza. Actually, I don't think he got Raza. He just got Amdur out on his own, and so Amdur could combat anywhere he's fight 7. So I had to strike with the Witch King even though I was higher. Strike with the Emperor, not strike with the Witch King. I'm not the Witch King player, but he didn't strike back in the Witch King. I was like, it's a little weird. Amdur, I don't think called combat. He was just sitting there, just killed Brogyr, and I was like, well, that stinks. And then the Emperor killed the Witch King, and I was like, great, grab the objective. I have 3 of the objectives. I killed his leader. This is awesome. The problem was the bait that he used, because he used the Witch King as bait, which he used a lot as his list. My Emperor was like 10 inches away from the entire rest of my lines, which I'm fine with because he's fight 7, he's got might, he's got the Palanquin, whatever. But he got that turn, he picked it up, he got transfixed. And he was like, oh, that's cool. I'm just going to walk past it. Raza came in. Raza called the combat earlier, so he was in range. Him and Amdur tag team someone and then just killed them. Next turn, the Witch King, sorry, not the Witch King. I keep using that. The Emperor was fine. He was fighting a couple dudes, but my forces were unlinked. I was dying. I lost like 10 models. I'd only killed 2 because he was just combating through my lines. Wasn't able to do much. And then Raza and Amdur were in range. They tagged the dude. We're ready to combat into the Witch King. So I had to strike with the Witch King. And what I didn't see was, I mean, I keep saying the Witch King. Sorry. Dragon Emperor. I'm not the Witch King player. I normally play the Witch King. Struck with the Dragon Emperor, but I didn't see Amdur combated straight into Rutabi. Didn't see it. Killed Rutabi. Had to blow all his might to do it. I was like, that's not good because the Dragon Knight had spent his might at this point on a combat and just like flubbed another roll or a move. The Emperor was all by himself. He got transfixed the exact next turn again by the heirloom. I was like, this heirloom is so dumb. And he was just killing my dudes. I was broken. I wasn't gonna break him. And at that point, like the mistake from the drum, the mistake from the Emperor, the mistake from Rutabi, all these things really started to add up. And he got to one of my dudes, took back one of the objectives, brought another objective to the middle, didn't roll the 1 or 2. Next game, the Emperor tried to march within 6 of the center, dismounted because, why not? I think he hid behind a building. All my heroes were dead. And then I think the only error he made the entire game was this turn he sent Amdur and Raza into the Dragon Knight and just a cavalry model into one of my dudes with the objectives, who was transfixed again that turn. And that dude with the objective actually won, so he didn't kill it, but he killed the Dragon Knight. He could have easily thrown Amdur or Raza to make sure he got the objective. Maybe didn't want him to get transfixed, but then just, give it to the cataphract. But that turn, we rolled the 1 or 2, thankfully. And again, I'd mismeasured the Emperor, and he was not within 6 of the center, so he had broken me. He had an objective in the center. He had another objective. I just had 2 objectives, neither near the center, and I killed his leader. Ended up losing 9-5, which was a minor loss, which we'll talk about the importance of that a little bit later. But I really just made too many mistakes between Rutabi and the Emperor, and the transfix really messed me up. And he's a really good player. I don't think he made that many mistakes. I think just when I'm playing against someone who is a better player than me, you can't make those mistakes and win. So I learned a lot about, and there was a couple things specifically about the scenario. He gave a lot of advice in which you don't want to pick him up first turn because you have to deal with that transfix. Like, it is actually a disadvantage to take the objectives the first time. And because he used his heroic combats, which is something that I really saw was deadly, was he just had his 2 heroes in combat the whole time. And between Raza's secret rule and his strike and Amdur going anywhere, I had to burn a lot of might to save this, and I was losing models pretty fast. I don't think he called a single heroic move the whole game and absolutely decimated me. So I learned a lot from that game. But yeah, it was pretty sloppy on my part, so I ended up losing that.
From the
But yeah.
games I saw of Patrick's, I really enjoyed watching him play. He plays similar to me in some regards, completely different in others. his use of heroic combat, I do that exact same thing. Also, like the way he would use his parts of his list as just like extreme bait is just something I love doing. Like in one of the lists I'm playing right now, I bring along two casters literally to throw them away because people think that they are much better than they actually are and much more important than they actually are. Now, to be fair, one of them has Fury, so in some matches, very important. But the majority of the time, I will literally deploy them where there is no other model within 3 inches of them, just waiting for a cavalry hero or a flying monster to come and kill them. But as long as I know where their heroes are going, where their resources are going, I can play into the rest of their list. As long as I have the control, I don't care. And so like the way I saw him using specifically his Witch King as like almost this big bait piece, it brought me so much joy to watch because I was just like, I love this guy.
Yeah.
That play style is just so fun. And it's so underestimated because people go, oh, that's a 245 point model. Like, yeah, I want to go kill it. And like he doesn't even have the blade, so it's like he could win and not even kill me.
He did have the blade. He did have the blade.
The list he sent me doesn't
Which,
have the blade in it.
oh, okay. Never mind. Well, I don't think it mattered too much. Yeah, he
I don't.
played the Witch
Yeah.
King as the leader every game. I think the Witch King died in most of them because he'd just throw it out and he wouldn't even like strike. Like that Witch King died with 2 points of might. I was a little surprised, like even though he didn't strike, but it just put the Dragon Emperor out of such a bad position. And out of the 4 or 5 turns the Dragon Emperor had the objective, 3 of those he got transfixed. Which, okay, some of those are bad rolls, but even then, he played his list perfectly and in a way that surprised me, and I wasn't expecting to see it played. And when you're a better player and you do that, you're gonna win your games. So. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about because that night, because it was 3 rounds first day, 2 rounds second day. So that night, I went out with some of like 10 or some of the dudes out and talked a lot with Griff and Matt, which is super cool because Griff was running a Mumuk. So it was fun to hear all of his stories and stuff and throw back advice and questions about like, ooh, should the Mumuk war leader or this? And talked a lot about Matt, who was running Lothlorien and kind of talked to Pajama Elves versus Galadrim Elves. So it was just super fun to hang out and talk with those people. So shout out to you two. I had a really fun time. And then we went back home and I think I fell asleep at like 10. Like I was so zonked. But
Lucky
I
I was
was
still driving home from Sherman it.
I was happy I walked away with that because I knew you could still lose. I knew I wasn't going to win the
Yeah.
tournament with a loss because there were 3 undefeated players at that point. So, but I walked away from that with a major win, a minor win, and a minor loss. And I think honestly, all those games I should have lost at some point, just based on the scenario and based on a couple lucky things that went my way. So I was super happy with day one, and yeah, I think we'll move on to day two in a second. So, alrighty. So unfortunately, Andrew had to leave, but we are now going to go on to day two. And now I won't be talking alone because Trey, you got to play some games in day two. You want to talk about that?
I did. So I was playing a 750 list that I've just been playing recently for fun. And so I just brought my 750 points of the Battle of the Greenfields, which is a project I've been slowly building up for a time. Took a break on to play the Gray Company at the end of last year, which was still the Gray Company. Okay, I would go off on way too long of a tangent. I love the Gray Company, to say the least. And I think it's actually competitive, contrary to other people's opinions. Point proven. I took them into pool six versus a Wood Elf Lothlorien with the cloaks, the bows, and the blinding light, and beat it in one of the
Ouch.
best pools, arguably for them,
Okay, all right.
which Michael definitely wasn't playing. Anyways,
Yeah,
Battle of
that
the
was my
Greenfields.
Lothlorien.
I had 19 Rangers of the North. 14 of them had spears. I had Banderbras and a Warhorn, and then 62 models. I think it comes out as like 33 bow shots a turn. All of your throwing stones. You get the dominant two around Banderbras, and then the best rule: you get to reroll ones to hit if you're in your own deployment zone with the Hobbit. And I used that rule once, but it's still a cool rule.
And they say Rangers are broken.
I never once used any of the special rules in the Legion other than the Rangers of the North get 2 attacks. That's the only one I
The
really
the
ever
free
used.
combat? You don't kill things with Brandivus?
Vanderbros in the okay, so I guess we can go into round 4, and I guess
Yeah,
I'll start
yeah.
because you're asking. So round 4, we rolled pool. What is it? Three
Maelstrom.
the Maelstrom pool. And so I did the dumb thing, and I was like, here's the thing. He's a Balrog player because I was against one of the Depths of Moria. I'm just gonna veto hold ground, and if we get it, we get it because I have enough bodies. If I can keep Vanderbros alive, I should be able to at least put up a fight in it if he does end up picking it. Thankfully, he didn't choose it,
Oh.
which to me, I will still say was the wrong choice.
Hmm.
So then we ended up playing Command to the Battlefield, which arguably is slightly better for him than the Sites of Power one.
Yeah, a little bit.
You could make the argument it is worse, which actually in the long run, it probably ended up being worse because of how I played it. So he came on first. His entire army came in one blob, except for the Watcher, obviously. And so then my army came in. All of my
How
one
many
drops.
how long did it take you to roll like for like 30 some warbands?
That took a while. Um, and I also had to go mix up some tokens for heirlooms for other boards because I was still TOing. But that was the other thing is I had a 750 list, so I was trying to play it just fast to keep up since everybody else was playing 800 lists. Um, and it was very fun. So I came in with almost all of my one drops except for two came in right there behind the Balrog. So I was like, okay. I was like, one, here's the thing. So there was this weird piece of terrain, and his force came in on the same board side, but on either side of that terrain. But the Balrog moved first, and he moved him the full 8 inches in, and then pretty much walled him off using like because of the terrain piece. The Balrog could not make combat by running back through his lines. So for me, turn one, I was just like, I'm just gonna put most of my army there, and then I'm gonna put like a warband of hobbits in each of the other corners and just start running around.
Yeah. His
So
list
that's
was
exactly what I did. So I just started. The issue was is like 5 of my warbands ended up on the other side, including the one I wanted on the other side, which was Banderbras Took. Banderbras, I ran into the middle of that quarter by himself with 3 hobbits and a ranger of the north. I did this because I wanted the Watcher of the Water to come down to kill Banderbras, but not come down, but on the opposite side from his army.
hmm,
And it worked because he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get the leader kill, and then he can just sit here killing hobbits." The issue is he's only dominant 6, so he's also only movement 4, which he was playing at movement 6. He said that that was a change in the new edition, which it wasn't. I checked later, but like I honestly didn't care, so I was just like, whatever. But I pretty much just kept models always in parts of the table, but I always had like 8 on the one that had his Watcher. So from this point, like almost from the get-go, I had all of the board edges double except for the one with the Balrog. And the first turn of combat, I actually lost a bunch of fights. I killed a handful of guys. I killed like 6 or so goblins, which is it's fine. Also,
yeah.
the first turn when I half moved everything on, I only got 2 kills with all of my like 30 bow shots,
Wow.
which was fine. But I was also I didn't really care much about the shooting. Some of it I was like actually just fighting normally. Like I wasn't even worried about the shooting because it was just like I'd rather have these guys in a better position with this weird piece of terrain. So then turn two, I engaged fully, and I further haloed the Balrog. So the Balrog was out of combat for the first 2 turns. And in this turn, I killed a bunch of guys. So on one flank, I pretty much killed half of it in one turn with my like 7 Rangers of the North and like 6 Hobbits. And on that flank, he outnumbered me, but it was just goblins. And so I
Yeah.
pretty much just walled it off. So it was all 1v1s with my Rangers, called like 2 combats, and then just killed a wall of goblins. So at that point, it was like, okay, perfect. Yeah, this flank is entirely mine. There's nothing he can do about it. He had this one annoying goblin archer that refused to die. He kept fighting 1v1s and 1v2s against Rangers of the North and winning every single time. I shot him out on the last turn with 3 Rangers of the North with 3 points of might, and one of them finally was able to might it up to kill this one Goblin Archer. But I was so happy to kill him. That Goblin Archer was a legend. On the third turn, I was able to again move out of range of the Balrog. of course, then the Balrog moved, got the one random lucky shot that hits on the 4+, doesn't kill the Hobbit Archer that was in range, drags the Hobbit Archer, so then he can combat off and be perfectly in position now. So I was like, okay, whatever. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
But by this point, it was just way too late. He had killed Vanderboss with the Watcher. I pretty much kited the Watcher, held all the board edges, including the one with the Balrog at this point. Then the Balrog got a bunch of kills, so he got majority there. But I just literally just walked through all of his goblins with my 19 Rangers of the North. Shot out a few, had some Rangers hiding in some woods, holding some other ones. And I would say the big thing that really popped out in this game was just, yes, a lot of people think the Greenfields is just really slow in general, but I actually rate it highly because of your use of heroic combats. Because you have 21 points of might at 750 with 62 models, you have so much board control in the matter of you don't have a banner, but most of the time I'll just save their might for mighting that 5 up to a 6.
Mm-hmm.
Or calling heroic combats where I drastically outnumber people simply to refuse flank, simply to move further, move 4 inches more, 3 inches more, whatever it is. Like just using the combats to move, not even to get more kills, is just such a tool. And I'll get even more into that in the next game because that's really how I just absolutely won the next game that I played. But yeah, I mean, it was a fun game, great game. I also learned just throwing 2 ranges to the north that were healthy into the Balrog really just slowed him down because he had to get all 4 wounds through. Otherwise, the likelihood of me passing the fate with a point of might was just pretty high likelihood. So
Yeah.
he only got 1 combat fully off whenever I did that with the Rangers, which was an interesting use. And really, I was just there to have fun and more mess around with it and try new things with this list and just preparation for using it in future since I was just a ringer and not competing. But yeah, that one ended up as like a minor, like 15 to 10 win or something. I don't even remember.
Yeah. No, that's I think it also came down to like your list plays well, but also I think the bait with the Watcher was just because if you have the Watcher in that main battle line
Yeah.
who can pull or like he can kill stuff, but he can also pull 3 or 4 Rangers and reliably pretty eat them
Yes.
well with his 6
Yep.
attacks. So yeah,
That
that
that was my
was
worry was if he's killing 3 Rangers of the North a turn, he's defeating my army list. Because I started 50 points down, then I sacked a Ranger of the North and the leader turn 1. So I'm essentially even further down victory points. Now, yes, I have board control. So in terms of like overall victory points, I'm higher, but he's the only one that has guaranteed victory points at this point, right? Also, that Warhorn is clutch. Like that made me pass so many courage tests. That's been my favorite buy of the list so far.
Warhorn. Yeah. I want to see more Warhorns next edition. Do something fun to make Warhorns better because they're okay, but
Make them all +2 courage.
no, we don't want Arkenbrand back. Yeah. No, I think it does well and Greenfields has plays well into things. Like sure there's a weakness of maybe if like killing the Balrog is gonna be very hard with that list and sometimes
Yes.
mobility is there. But you'll get stuff like if you played Hold Ground, you have 60 something stupid models in Dominant 3. Like it's hard to beat. It has very good strengths. It also has some weaknesses too. Like it's easy to get hero kills and gain VPs from that. But I think in your hands, it should do quite well.
Yep. So, what was your game like? Because this one was interesting.
Yeah, this one I feel a little bit bad for. So I was playing against John, who was running a list that I was terrified of the whole tournament, which was I think Army of Erebor. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Yeah,
And
the one with
shout out to John. I love playing John. Like of the players in our
oh yeah.
community, John and Kobe are like my favorite 2 people to play. I love playing against John. Like I can't say that enough.
Yes.
I love playing against
He's
John.
he is awesome. Our game was great. There was no controversy. We were all really clear. I feel bad, which we'll get into why I feel bad in this because he lost on Maelstrom rolls. Like his army was one that I was terrified of for a couple reasons. First of all, I don't remember how many models he had, but he gets free heroic combats. He had Thorin, the one that gets the might back on a 5, who's like D9 333. He had Nori, who's D9, and then obviously Gimme and Gloin, who all get free heroic combats. All are like fight 6 or something. They can carve through my army in 2 or 3 turns and they're all really hard to kill. Plus, I'm against Iron Hills that are D8 that are super hard to kill. And I think he had more models than me. I don't remember the exact count. I think it was like high 30s or like low 40s. So he didn't outnumber me too much. Had 3 goat riders, couple crossbows. But it was Maelstrom, which I knew I was going to play him going after day one, and that was the pool I wanted. So unfortunately, it was a couple of vetoing. I vetoed heirlooms. I was really scared that he was going to veto heirlooms and we were both going to play it. Not because we had an advantage, but just because heirloom sucks and I hate it. But he vetoed, I want to say, Sites of Power, which I was fine with. So
Yeah, yeah.
it was either hold ground, which I can get to the ground, I can get hold ground first to there first, which I'm fine with, or command the battlefield, which is actually the one that I wanted more. And we got command the battlefield, and for the first time this entire new edition, I won the priority for Maelstrom. So I didn't have to go first. Every single game I played this edition, I've gone first. But I think all of that was made up in his roles. So he started with Thorin. So the board was super interesting. And it was one I was slightly concerned about, but it really played into this game. It was the Congo's Creation Isengard board. So it was a giant ring with Orthanc in the middle, which we moved Orthanc to the side so the middle wouldn't be in the middle of Orthanc because for obvious reasons you just get in the doorway and stand there and that's unfair. But there were four different archways you could enter and three different crumbling ruin sections. But other than that, especially in Maelstrom where you deploy on the edges of the board, it's hard to get into Orthanc in and of itself. So he started by grabbing Thorin, who rolled a 6, put him on a corner near one of the ruin objectives. Not obviously in the corner, but as close as possible. Because those were only 3 points that the Emperor could get in with his 80 mil base. He couldn't fit through the arches, so he only had 3 entry points. And then came the worst rolls possible for Maelstrom. Gloin started, and Gloin rolled the accursed 2. And he sat there for a little bit, but did what he should do. He spent 2 might points because Gloin is a free roll at combat, so he doesn't want his doors split up. So Gloin deployed, and I think this might be where he made one of the mistakes. He deployed him about 12 inches away from Thorin, right in one of the archways, so he could just walk through into Orthanc, which made sense. Then he rolled for Gimli. Gimli rolled a 2. He spent 2 mites on Gimli, brought him over by Thorin. But there was about a 10-inch gap between the two, so it was Thorin and Gimli, and then Gloin, and then Nori rolled the 1, so which isn't the worst. But I went for my roll. Brogir rolled a 2, and I went, let's have fun. You get a pick. And he picked Brogir smack in between his two warbands. I was like, oh, this game's gonna be fun. Rutabi and the Dragon Knight both rolled 4s or like 6s. They both went in there as well. Dragon Emperor rolled a 1. So you have Gloin on one side, and you have Thorin and Gimli on the other side, and my little bit of an army in between. Now, I think the problem he made here was he deployed a little bit too far away. So when I walked on, I was able to get the Dragon Knight and Rutabi facing Gloin's one warband, and I was able to send some archers and some shieldmen to the side to block off. He couldn't charge me the first turn from his Thorin and Gimli's warband. Acolytes hopped over the wall. His Goat Riders ran through Orthanc, trying to get to some of the corners. And then turn 2, we both called moves. I got in. Rutabi got into 1. Got Blade Wrath on Rutabi, which is why Brogir was so key. He rolled a 6 on it, so I got it back for free, which is super helpful. And then Dragon Knight went into 2, stuck pikes between all my dudes, made sure he couldn't tag anyone, positioned it so even if he wanted to move off, he couldn't get Brogir. And then that turn, I didn't call a combat. I thought about calling combat into Gloin, but I didn't really want that. Ended up killing like 3 or 4 models, and I think he killed 1. And I was like, that's great. I have my heroes in. I'm getting the +1 to wound, so I can, like with Rutabi with Blade Wrath +1 to wound, she can combat through 4 Iron Hills really easily. And then that turn, Nori, unfortunately, I think this is where he made, I think the final mistake was Nori rolled a 2. And he was kind of like, I'm sick of this. I'm not going to spend might. So I got a pick, and I stuck Nori on the corner next to, so he was probably like 12 inches away from Gloin, but in the corner where the only access point was to head towards Gloin and go through the archway. And what I had done is I had locked off his entire warband on one side of the board, and because the Emperor, which I then rolled, got a 6 deployed right next to Thorin, blocked off the entryway, so the only way he was getting models onto the board was through the archway, which now I had Rutabi and the Dragon Knight fighting over that. So he was basically trapped in, but my middle army was getting sandwiched, so I was calling combats. I was trying to cut through as quickly as possible and not get sandwiched. Brogir's Blade Wraths were awesome. And in this game, there was so much might flying around. Rutabi, I think, got 5 Master of Battles, and Thorin got 4 of his might free from rolling a 5 or a 6. So there were free heroic combats left, right, and center. There were all of these moves. And unfortunately for him, I think there were a couple of things that went wrong in rolling. Gimli killed one model the whole game, and he didn't lose a like he lost one combat. Actually didn't think he lost a combat the whole game. He rolled threes and fours like no one else, and because he wasn't near Gloin, he wasn't getting anything. I blocked out Gloin out of combat. Nori never got into anyone. I was just slowly upping the kill count. The Emperor got into crossbowmen and was killing them left, right, and center. So I was getting ahead on the kill count, and the 9 pikemen and the 2 cataphracts drummed off to the center of the board. And it was just the Emperor on one side, and his guys had moved up forward. And it was basically some killing in between there. But at that point, he was never getting anyone out towards the center. He tried to run some dudes back, but then like ran Gloin back. But I think what was really hard is I positioned it so Thorin, I think, got the most kills, like 4 or 5. Gimli got 1 or 2 kills. Nori just didn't do anything. He took forever to kill, but I killed him. I was just getting Blade Ras off that was doing lots of damage. Gloin got into combat once or twice, but ended up dying. And then the only Tremor I got off the entire tournament was so clutch. Brogir just threw 2 dice into Tremor, got the 6, and killed a Goat Rider, and kill the banner, and then knock the other 2 models off, which the Dragon Knight combated off those 2 other models into another model and killed. So I'd count that Tremor as like 5 kills, even though it's strength 4. So it was very nice. I think it was hard, and I think he had to deploy in a way in which he could cover the corner of the board edges. He had 2 Goat Riders out, but I had 11 models that I had with a drum that could just go anywhere. One of his Goat Riders fled, and he sent one of his Goat Riders back to the other objective, but all in told, I had 2 of the corners just completely locked up, no models near that. I doubled him in both of the others. And then the last turn, the Emperor had a might point left. He was on Gloin, and he had 2 dudes. And Thorn was facing Ratabi in a strike off. And I was like, I have a might point. Let's call a combat. So I call a combat. I killed Gloin because he failed his fate miserably. But in order to get into Thorn, I had to block the control zones of Gimli and another dude. So those shieldmen went in there because I had dismounted earlier because the banner and the Emperor did nothing the whole game. Like, they were kind of worthless, but they didn't need to do too much. The Emperor went in, won the strike off because Utabi called the strike. He had the Elven Blade and did 2 wounds or 3 wounds, but he passed his fate. And then the 2 models that went into Gimli and the Iron Hill shieldmen both died. And that was actually enough to break me. So I lost VPs there, but if I had killed the leader, I might have felt a little bit better about it. But ultimately, I think it was like 14-1 or something. I felt really bad because his rolls, and that was awful, and that deployment was bad. But I think there were some things, if he had deployed his army together, he could have gotten that. He should have probably spent the 2 might with Nori and deployed on the complete opposite side to contest some of the objectives. But yeah, it was a really fun game. We had tons of fun. My heroes did work in that game. The Dragon Emperor's base was really big, so I had to dismount him to get into dudes. But I think between like Rutabi, the Dragon Knight, and the Emperor, I got like 22 Iron Hills warriors just killed from the +1 to wound and the Blade Wrath. It was They did all the work, and that's what I needed to do. I needed to make sure his heroes didn't kill my troops, and I just need to slowly grind them. So ultimately, I did win that with a major victory, which I was happy with. So.
Yep. I mean, I have felt the pain of having to blow 4 might turn 1 on Maelstrom before and doing that exact same mistake of splitting up those first 2 warbands and then being kind of forced to use might on the rest of your warbands. Yeah, it's painful, like very
Yeah,
painful. You can pull it out. It's just it does make it much more challenging.
and I think with
Um,
his army, it wasn't 100% like he had to spend the might
yeah.
because he did
Yep.
spend the might. He has free hero combats, and I kid you not, Thorin was going off. Like he just rolled 5 and 6s and got all this free might, and then I was like, I think he spent like 6 or 7, no pun intended, might during that game. But yeah, I just really think he needed to contest the objectives. And like I think it just came down to him not spending the might with Nori, which I completely understand because it's hard to spend 6 might on Maelstrom.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I think in a different scenario it would have been a much harder game. But yeah, it was a great opponent. We had tons of fun. He was killing stuff. He was rolling his might well. And I think to talk about how much might was spent, a move and a combat were called every turn. There was some move, some combat being called. And yeah, it was super fun. So shout out to John. Great job. I love playing against you. I really hope to get in more games. And I would love to have played not Maelstrom, but sometimes that's how it is.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Going into round five, the final round.
Ooh.
Um,
Oh, okay.
well,
Do we want
well,
to talk about what happened? So there were three undefeated players. There was Patrick, who had played before, Alex, who was running Shadows of Angmar, which we referenced with the five shamans, two barrow whites, Gully. Ugh,
yep,
such a nasty list. And then Breaking of the Fellowship, I think, which was on like
Isaac. Yep,
two wins and a
he
draw.
had. Yep.
Isaac
So
unfortunately lost that round.
Isaac lost that round to Christian with a Memorialist, which
We'll
we
talk
are going
about.
to talk a lot about that one. I think so. We can go through our rounds, and then we can go into. I
Well,
watched a ton of Christian and Patrick's game, so we can
yeah.
go through our two rounds.
You want a
Then when we
quick
want to,
the round four where Alex played in Maelstrom. Alex
yeah,
again had
I'll
bad rolls and
yes,
he suffered a major win. So Patrick was
yes,
undefeated at that point, had a lot of VPs. So he basically had the tournament locked as long as he didn't
yes.
like screw up the last round. So
If he major lost and you major won, you would win the event.
same thing with Alex too. I think if Alex major
Alex would have lost on tiebreakers to Patrick.
true because he had the major. So
He
we'll
had a
we'll see
major
what that
loss.
goes into.
Yep.
But you want to go into your game now?
So yes, round five. It was pool one. So pretty much the only pool we were not playing this event was the killing pool. So
That was my favorite pool with these three. There were like
yeah, that's
Smog
fair.
really wanted that pool, but that pool did
Yep.
not come for Smog.
Uh-huh.
So
And here's the thing, for me, when I play a tournament, I would think if it's a 5 round tournament, that's the pool I don't want to play
yeah,
because it's the most straightforward and boring pool in my opinion.
it's
There's
the
the
best pool for
least
my army. But yes,
specific skill involved. There's less dynamics you have to worry about, except for an assassination, really.
yeah, it also
Um,
feels that pool is the most swingy because if you get a
yeah,
Balrog or a Smog in contest, you're like, really?
I say if you get a
So,
Balrog in any of them other than assassination, you're kind of in that boat.
yeah, that's unfortunate.
Or Lords of Battle is possible. The issue is
Break and
the
leader.
the break one and leader, yeah.
As so, I've played
Um,
Andrew in those so many times, but I
uh-huh.
digress. Continue.
Yep. So we were in the that pool. I was instantly like, okay, he's got Dale. I was playing Clay, which I'll actually have a lot to talk about Clay in just a bit. But when it comes to the veto, I was like, okay, which scenarios require running forward and taking objectives? Well, all of them. Okay, well, which ones require it really fast? And I was like, okay, so the one scenario I really want to play is the one scenario I really don't actually like. And that one is the one where you have stake a claim. That one.
Stake a claim. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I
Shooting
don't
armies
like
don't
that
like it.
scenario. Well, it's my play style. I just don't like where I have to be forced into one position the entirety of a game. I like being fluid with my movements and completely unpredictable. So, like in that terms, in those regards, I absolutely hate that mission. That's why I love missions like domination and stuff, is because it's like it's important that the objectives are there, but it's more important to win on them. Like that's
Yeah.
the style of game I prefer because like it gives people false senses of security when you abandon all five of them and then just come raging back at the very end and take all five back. It's like the most
Mm-hmm.
enjoyable feeling ever. But anyways,
Unless you're on
I
the
was
other
like,
side of the table.
yes.
I've been
Um,
on that side way too much.
but so I was like, okay, I want that one. I hate that one, but I want that one because he has Dale. He has equal-ish shooting threat to me. The issue is he wounds me better than I wound him.
Hmm.
Even with my might, I was like, here's the thing: if it's just a standard shoot off and I can shield off my bows behind my lines, I think I could outshoot him just with my 19 might on my bows. But I just didn't even want to try it. I would rather run forward, meet him, kill him, and win. So I was like, domination is the worst because he can pull his two objectives back, deploy back there with his wind lances, and just shoot. Right. Well, that's also what he picked because he had a feeling I was going to do that. So we ended up playing domination, which
Yep.
honestly, I'm not gonna lie, actually, after playing the game, I actually think that might have been the best scenario for me because of that exact same reason. There are two ways it could play out. One, he had max bows, so a third of his army list cannot shield.
Mm.
So I can run forwards, and if his shooting just pops off and I lose a third of my 60 models before combat, well, then I can break myself, quarter myself, hold the objectives, and win. If he doesn't, I will walk through his army with my essentially 19 fight for captains, because that's basically what they are. They just don't
Yeah.
have the same
They just can't take
defensive
a hit.
abilities. Yes. And so I was like, if I get in there without losing more than 5 ranges of the north, I will walk through him. And so we run forwards. We were on that same Isengard board. So super
Hmm.
interesting. On one flank, on the outside of the wall, I placed 3 rangers of the north and 6 hobbit archers to counter his captain with his 4 knights of Dale, 3 archers, and 3 warriors of spear and shield. So I was like, this will be interesting. We've got a little bit of a shooting war. He's got the higher defense. I've got more shots. And then on the inside of one of the walls, I just stacked all of my hobbits, and on the opposite side, I stacked the rest. And then inside the Tower of Orthanc, I put 2 rangers of the north, Banderbras took my Warhorn, and 2 hobbits. So I was like, he has to run forwards, and he has to really put out some damage to get over my dominant 2 on the few hobbits that I have in here, and the fighting power of 2 hobbits and my striking Banderbras. So instantly I was like, here's the thing, I actually don't hate this. And I just started rushing him. I was like, I could sit back and shoot, but rushing him would be more interesting. So one thing he did was turn 1 on the outer flank on the outside of the wall. He pulled back those guys. And so I was like, on this flank, I've got, what is that, 9 bow shots. I'm just going to take some shots, maybe get some pings off on his captain. So I did. I did 0 damage. Classic me. When it comes to shooting, I can't roll to save my life. But then when it comes to random clutch rolls or specifically banners, then I'll like randomly just pop off, which is funny
Ooh.
because I hate banners and like
But you do so
I,
well with them.
I do really well with banners. I cannot tell you the amount of success I've had with the Great Eye token in the Army of the Great Eye. That is my best friend. But
Like,
I just,
and then you run Realms of Men with 2 banners. I'm more traumatized from your Men of the West that you ran last edition.
yes.
Every time he'd be like, "Oh no, I rolled the 3 high." I was like, "Yes, you should." Nope, he rolled a 6 on a banner. Stupid banner.
And then there would be the random times where I did a roll a 3 high and then it would get higher and then I was screwed because I'd blown 3 points might on a heroic combat. But I still played well with that army list and I only lost one
Yes,
game with it
but
in
banners are
tournaments.
great.
They are. They are, let's be real, they are the competitive choice. They are the best choice. But I will still play a lot of games without them. I'll
They
give a
like to
sneak
meme.
peek. For both of my Adepticon lists, I have 0 banners.
Yeah, true banners. 0 true banners.
True banners. I have
There you go.
0. I have 1 fake banner. I'll put it that way.
2 fake banners. Cause
No, only one.
no, you're not taking. Oh, right. Yeah, you
Yes.
changed it.
Which
Sorry.
actually, if we want to spend like 20 minutes at the end of this just randomly talking about my Adepticon list, I don't care if people know what I'm taking. They can
No,
prepare all they
Trey, come
want.
on.
They
You
just
must
don't.
win Masters. Shh.
I'm not talking about my Masters list.
Oh, yeah, your main list.
I think only 2 people know what my Masters. Oh wait, no, I told several people at the event because they aren't going to Adepticon.
That's fine.
That's fine. But
Back to the
yes,
game.
back to the game. So he actually did this really funky move where he moved backwards and then ran right back forwards. And so I was like, okay, that's interesting. But then he ran through one of the doorways back into the inner courtyard that I had just moved past with the majority of my force. So now he had Girion, his 2/3 of his army on where I was running at, and then he had his last little group on the inside, pretty much collapsing in on me. So he had surrounded about half of my force with Dale. The issue is one of his guys didn't have enough movement to fully get in through there,
Mm.
and I had line of sight. So I threw 3 rangers in him with 3 ranger spear sports. Or no, just the 3 rangers, because I only had 3 on that flank. Combated off them, then pretty much put a thin wall of rangers to pretty much double trap. So it was this
Ooh.
really cool like double sandwich situation. And then my hobbits were also practically right there too. And so at this point, it was game on. And so he runs forward and he's like, I'm not going to engage you. I've got the better shooting. At this point, I'm just sitting there like, you do, but you also have +2 to wound if I charge you because you have a bunch of Knights of the Dale, and I have Hobbit throwing stones. So, I mean, to be fair, only like two of his guys could have charged, which would have been bad because then I would have just mobbed those two. So
Yeah.
we go into a shooting war. He kills two hobbits that turn. By the way, his shooting was very good. But I returned fire and killed three Knights of Dale with like my 10 throwing stones that turn and two ranges of the north shooting. So
Pretty
like
good.
all things considering, I
Y-
was feeling great.
Yeah,
Because at
two
this point
hobbits are nothing.
I had one bow kill the previous two turns. So I was like, okay, yeah, my shooting dice isn't great. I was like, might as well throw out my throwing stones. Did that, killed a couple of Knights of Dale. I was like, oh, this will be fun. The next turn, he was like, here's the thing. I've still got a shot with my wind lance, both of them. I've got all my bows. You haven't killed that many of them. I'm gonna try and just sit back, make you charge me, kill some more hobbits. So he kills like three more hobbits. On the back flank where we had like double sandwiched, I just charged and just killed a bunch. I killed one of his captains with three Rangers of the North, which felt great. Which actually, I killed all of his captains, but one with Rangers of the North, and that was just such a fun feeling. That the amount of dice you can put into a captain for the same cost as a captain just makes me so happy. And then I just walked through his entire flanking force basically, and then my throwstones killed another two of the Knights of Dale. So at this point, I had killed five Knights of Dale with throwing stones, and I had killed his flanking force except for one model. So he was almost broken at this point, and I had just killed like four archers on the top of a rampart with four Rangers of the North. So I was like, I'm feeling very good. So the next turn, and here's the thing, every single time I won priority this entire game, I took it once. He never gave it to me
Hmm.
because I won the first few, gave it to him. And once we made combat, I was giving it to him because I was forcing him to make the decisions. Because
Yeah.
at this point, again, he was nowhere near any of the objectives except for one. And so I also did what some of our friends in Australia would call the Picard maneuver, which is you put your hobbits in front of your Rangers of the North. So then he was just measuring for 4 inches of range. So when he went to engage with his less movement to engage me, he left some gaps open. He's like, okay, here's the thing. I'll still get some shots with my wind lance through these gaps. And I was like, yeah, great. The issue was he was measuring for all of the hobbits, not the rangers right behind those hobbits.
So
So
smart.
I walked my hobbit sideways, and then with my 6 inches, got like practically to the millimeter into his wind lance, killed the wind lance, and then just started munching everything up. That made me
Oh,
so
that
happy.
that is a great move. I want to do that with AOL, but like 1 inch doesn't make that big because you're already at 1 inch back. But
It's the 1 inch is fine. I would say the bigger thing is when you've got some of specifically Gundabad berserkers in the army of Gundabad. It's just
oh,
such a nasty tool because
I'm
nobody ever sees it.
bro, I'm so happy you pulled. That is an epic move.
That was my favorite move. Other than there was one move that made me more happy because later in the tournament, in this exact same round, we got into the position where he was like 3 models off quarter. This turn, I called 5 heroic combats.
Only
And
a
so I'm just
fourth of
sitting
your
there.
might.
Yeah, I was just sitting there daisy chaining all of my combats, setting up for one crucial heroic combat. And I got it off. So they daisy chained, got 5 Rangers of the North into one guy. And it's a Knight of Dale, so we're the same fight value. So I just knew, and one of my combats had failed, so I didn't kill his banner. So he had 3 dice with high fight value. If I got this, I could wall off literally the rest of the objectives for the rest of the game because I could slingshot my 5 Rangers of the North to create a line where his last captain and 4 guys that were marching towards the central objective and my back one would not be able to get through, and they were 3 inches away from the objective. So I knew if I got this combat off, he would be 2 models off quarter, and I would be able to hold off for the rest of the game. Got it off, slingshotted them all into this thin line 4.5 inches away from the central line so that he could not possibly, even with a heroic march, get to the central objective. And then I just threw a bunch of guys onto his back objective that turn, threw a hobbit like from the under the wall up so it was barely in range of the one where his second wind lance was. So
Mhm.
I nullified some victory points. Then I got the majority on the one with Girion. and then I held the other 3 completely at the end of the game with break not being broken. That's the other thing. With the 750 list into these 800 lists, I didn't break once, which I was very happy with.
Such a
But
flex.
like I said, going back to Clay, um, he joined the scene earlier this year. I believe he joined this edition. And his first few tournaments, like he was a lower tier player. He was fine. And then he's just grown a lot. Like he pulled some like that moving backwards to move forwards movement. I was very proud of. I was like, that is awesome. Like that was great. Sadly, because there was the one model that I would still charge, it kind of backfired. But and that's where like the one simple thing would be move him backwards rather than keep moving him in towards there, and that would have worked beautifully. That's just such a little thing that's just really hard to see. So it's like there was nothing wrong with it. It just did end up backfiring.
Yeah.
But it was such an interesting game, and I think he's grown a lot as a player. And he did have a strategy because he hid one of his captains with those 4 guys to literally march them at the very end of the game to try and get to the objectives. And he would have gotten there if it hadn't been for that heroic combat. So I was very happy with that heroic combat play, as well as the Picard maneuver one where I was able to snag the wind lance out.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. All right, so I'll go on to my round 5. And this one I'm going to talk in detail about the veto system because it really came into play here. Round 5, I was playing against Matt and his Lothlorien, who I had talked to the night before with Griff. So I knew a little bit about him and his list. He was running Celeborn, Galadriel, Haldir, 42 Pajama Elves, 2 Sentinels, no Cav, no guards of Galadrim Court, and he had like 8 Lorien Guard Galadrim in the warband with Celeborn and had all his archers but one in Haldir's warband. So up until this point, I had watched some of his games, and I know he's a very precise player, but he also, again, similar, plays a very slow play style. So I knew in order to win this game, I needed to get a scenario in which I would get ahead, and he has to come catch me. So for pool 1, I'm going to go into each of these scenarios because it's important. Stake a claim, I absolutely loved because if he wants to sit back and shoot, he's not going to contest the objectives. And first turn with the drum, I can get to 4 of the objectives. He can only get 1, and that gives me an 8-1 lead. Again, a lead that I need that he needs to catch up to me. Breakthrough, I love as well because that is the Easterlings scenario. I honestly think it's their favorite one because with the drum, with the heroes, with the Emperor, I can get into his backline much faster than he can because he doesn't have March. I have the drum, so wasn't worried about that. Domination was the one I didn't like because scoring didn't count until the end, and if I broke and I have a little bit less models, capturing control I really love because it can force his deployment to be weird. But again, I can tag the objectives and he has to come to me. So I vetoed domination. He ended up vetoing stake a claim, which understandably, and it rolled off and it went to capturing control, which I was very, very happy about. So ended up deployment. I didn't care where I was going. I deployed on the center line. The board was this Almond Hen board, which is super cool. I really like this board. And the objectives, one of them was like on a cliffside of Almond Hen, one was like behind this rock, and then one was in a forest, and then the other were kind of out in the open. So I got first, and I stuck Brogyr and some archers behind the rock on the objective. Pretty simple at the center line. He rolled for Howlir and had to deploy in the first 12 inches, which I was like, yes, awesome. But he deployed as far away from Brogyr as he could because it was kind of open in the center and there was this woods. So he deployed all the way over on the left side, but deployed in like this weird like diagonal formation with all of his archers, but he wasn't all the way 12 inches back. Like he was probably, I think, 4 or 6 inches off of the center line, as far away from my guys as possible. And I was like, okay, I think I can exploit this, but let's wait. So I stuck Rutabi right next to Brogyr. He again rolled the 1 or 2, stuck Celeborn's Warband all the way back like 12 inches across from my dudes. Galadriel got there as well, and then I put the Dragon Knight right next to stuck an Acolyte on the hill. So basically, it was Celeborn and Galadriel in the center, Haldir over on the side, and then I think I surprised him because the Emperor came last and deployed all the way over on the left flank, smack in front of Haldir. So first turn, it was a little bit complicated because I wanted my drum to be in range. So the drum was kind of out in the open and he won priority. So he actually did really good on his positioning. He was able to half move all of his archers back and make sure all of them were outside charge range of my regular dudes, except two. And then he sentinel pulled the drum, which Trey had to come and make a ruling about, which, as I read the rules, I agree on. He was able to pull the drum forward, didn't get the drum bonus, but I wouldn't be able to get the drum, pulled it within 6 inches of all his throwing weapons. Wasn't able to charge it though. And I was like, well, there goes my drum. That's unfortunate. And so on my turn, I got the Dragon Emperor into the two dudes he could charge, threw a cav into one dude to block some shooting lanes because he can't shoot through combat. And then I let my drum die, unfortunately, tagged four of the objectives, just straight off. Tagged both side ones, my back one, tagged the middle one, and then grabbed Rutabi, the Dragon Knight, and Brogear. Kind of ran up on the side. So he had his giant warband, his two warbands in the center, and I was attacking him on each of his other flanks. So that turn, his shooting did not do much. I think Haldir and the archers killed one of the Cataphract's horses, and then his throwing weapons didn't even kill the drum. They took out the horse, but due to the dismounting rules, the drum was gone anyways, so that was fine. Turn two, he over on his archer warband, I think called the move with Haldir, threw Haldir into the Emperor, and then he kept going moves over there and kept doing the terror with his sentinel. But I think like terror, I don't mind because I'm courage 6 and I have pikes, so if I were him, I probably would have not done the terror, but it could have stuffed up my deployment. But the Emperor didn't have any problem with that, so he charged into Haldir. I was able to charge some of those other dudes. And then his middle warband, he kind of split 5 or 6 guys off over to help the Archer warband, and then the rest of his force did exactly what I wanted and started to wrap around and try and tag the Brogear warband. That was with the rest. What I was really afraid of is because I was both on these two side objectives, what I didn't want him was just to run straight up the middle. Because he runs straight up the middle, he can contest my back objective, both of the side objectives, and the middle objective. But I had basically split it off where he could only contest really one of the side objectives because I had blocked off the other side objective and the middle one. But he did run 2 or 3 dudes up towards one of the side objectives, and Celeborn, he made a mistake with, totally forgot to cast with Celeborn. Galadriel threw a 1 dice at Rutabi and got like a 3. And I was like, great, I can throw just a 1 dicer. Threw my 1 dicer and it was a 2. And I was like, dang it, might point, whatever. And then that turn I ran in Rutabi, the Dragon Knight, combated with both because they were out of both of the casters couldn't reach the Emperor. I was like, I'm never gonna move these guys again. So between them, they got like 4 elves killed, and the Dragon Knight actually went onto his back objective and tagged it. So I had 5 of the objectives, but at this point we were already like an hour and a half into the game. I think between like 3 turns, it was an hour and a half. Like he was very precise and did everything perfect. But again, I knew I needed to get the advantage. He needed to catch up to me because his army is a little bit harder at doing that, and the style that he plays is a slower style. Haldir and the Dragon Emperor struck up, and Haldir won that because the Dragon Emperor rolled a 1, and I was like, really? It's kind of annoying. But over basically the rest of the game was pretty simple. I created a wall between the middle objective, like of a 7 dudes deep. Rutabi got transfixed every turn. Dragon Knight got sent back. But I was killing elves where I could. He made a play for the central objective, kind of tagged it a little bit, but I shot out some of his dudes, tagged him with some of my dudes that I had left. My Eastling archers actually did really well this game because despite like not hitting, they sniped out one of his sentinels. They killed 2 or 3 of his dudes going around the objective. And it kind of came down. The Dragon Emperor was destroying the archer warband because he would throw like 3 archers into a dude and 2 pikes. I would win the fight and go, I need 4s and 3s to wound them. 3 elves dead. Like I did that twice, where I just killed all 3 elves in the combat. And last turn, he wasn't going to get near any of my objectives because we were timing out. He had one play with 2 guys up the middle, but my archer won that and killed one of them. And last turn, I ended up breaking him. So I won that like 13 or 14 to like 3 because he got his back objective back. But I had 4 of the objectives, broken without being broken. Neither of our leaders was being touched. So I was really happy because going into day 2, I knew that I need any shot to get at podium. I need to get 2 major wins. And like In round 4 against John, I was literally shaking like the first couple turns. And then I kind of got settled in. This game, once it was capturing control, I was pretty much knew that I was gonna win this game because I had the advantage in that I could tag all the objectives and he wasn't gonna be able to. There were a couple mistakes he made, I think, forgetting to cast with Celeborn, but again, I was just playing off his tendencies that he was a very precise player. We talked a little about this earlier because he won the last game because there wasn't enough turns for his opponent to catch up, which is a situation I didn't want to get into. So, and he was totally fine. Like he was new to Lord of the Rings, not new to wargaming. So he was totally fine. He said learning the basics of it, if that cost him a loss. But yeah, I think the only advice would be like remember your casting and if anything, make a play for the objectives early. But I was really excited because not only did I get a major win, but Alex, who was on the table above me playing Jacob, who we talked about, only got a minor win. And then Trey, who was able to watch a lot of Patrick's game, who was undefeated at this point, was playing against Christian. I didn't see any of that game because I was focused on my game the whole time. But Trey, you want to talk us through that game because it sounded so fun.
That game, as soon as I saw the pairings come up and I saw that they were playing each other, I was like, oh my goodness, this is going to be an amazing game. So, based on the way I've seen Patrick plays this, I knew the basics. Which actually, fun fact, I did pick his mind afterwards because I've actually thought of running almost the exact same list, just switching out Raza's Warband for a different one because I don't care for the Haradrim in that build. But what he was playing against was a Moria list with 2 Cave Drakes, the Watcher in the Water, like 2 small warbands of goblins, and a Batswarm with Drew's Hag. One thing to note is Drew's Hag is actually very good this edition, especially as an army general, because
Hmm.
anytime you try to wound him, he can pick a beast within 2 inches of him, and on a roll of a 2+, he doesn't get wounded. The beast does.
Yes.
When you've got 2 6-wound Cave Drakes and a Batswarm behind them, you're never wounding the general. So that part is really cool. And so he has Drew's Hag, a Moria Goblin Captain, 2 Cave Drakes, the Watcher in the Water, a Batswarm, and like a ridiculously low amount of models. But I knew this would be the list that could absolutely wreck Patrick's day. And so I was really interested to see how this would go. So obviously they deployed, and honestly, it looked really weird from the start. In classic Patrick fashion, he threw his Witch King on a far flank objective by himself against a Batswarm, a Random Orc, and a Cave Drake. And he got killed. There's a bit of weird things going on in that I mean, a bit of things that rules got wrong with the Witch King, but it doesn't ultimately matter because the Witch King still died that turn. And from there, I was like, this will be really interesting because now there's the Batswarm and 1 Cave Drake are really far away from the main fights because the main fights were happening on Christian's back objective. Oh, and the scenario's breakthrough. And
Mm.
so it was a Cave Drake and a couple goblins just holding up this little gap right on top of their objective. So I was like, this is going to be interesting. So at some point, he dehorsed Kamul the Easterling. And Kamul, I mean, not Kamul, Amder,
Amder.
that
I
one.
was like,
Yeah.
Kamul.
Well, when he got dismounted, he was using his Witch King dismount because he forgot his Easterling
Oh.
dismount at home.
Hmm.
So that was funny. And so I was just like, oh, yeah, it's the Ring Wraith, but it's the Easterling. And then in my mind, it was going to
Yeah,
Kamul,
yeah,
not to
no.
Amder.
That
But
makes
yeah.
sense.
And then he was just hurling one model into Amder every single turn with the Cave Drake and eventually killed him, which is super interesting because neither of them really wanted to engage each other because it's like Amder, if he loses one fight to a Cave Drake, just instantly dies.
Yeah, he's
But if he beats the Cave Drake, the Cave Christian doesn't want his Cave Drake just taking needless damage from Amder. So it was this interesting dilemma of, well, this was the situation. So instead of Christian just using his Cave Drake just to mop up his entire army, he was just hurling into Amder every single turn. Then his other Cave Drake came over, helped clean up while that was still going on. Then the Watcher came down on Patrick's back objective.
ooh.
It got 11 kills. And a bunch of them were through shooting. Like the throwing weapons
Hmm.
were getting kills, which was just really funny. I was just sitting there like, wow, this is interesting. Oh, and also one of my favorite things Chris or Patrick was doing is he charged his Witch King up on top. They were on a Ravenhill board, so they had like the
Yeah.
bridge. He
Hmm.
charged up there into some goblins and then was just barging them off the cliff. So he was getting extra movement while still killing models, which
That's cool.
I was like, yeah, this is how we do it.
Take
Um,
out the goblins.
it was so funny to watch. And then he went got himself killed. But yeah, and then the Watcher just killed so many guys that when Raza got over there, because Raza obviously his target was the Watcher,
Yeah.
just didn't have any support to be able to take the Watcher out. So then, because it's breakthrough, Christian had his back objective, protected his own, because once he cleared out Amder, he was able to help protect it more. And then he had the leader kill. So he ended up getting a minor win, importantly. I'm pretty sure if he'd killed Raza on that back objective, he would have gotten a major win because the difference between having double and like completely is like 2 to 4 victory points.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he had a minor win against Patrick in the last round. And so now all of the drama comes up. How does the
Yep.
tournament end? So
So,
obviously I'm whatever, like because I'm a ringer, so I can't win. Otherwise, I definitely would have, right?
yeah, that's
I
why
went.
we all went, because you weren't playing. Colby's
No,
so sad.
I was teasing Patrick online that the only reason he won a Texas event was because I wasn't playing. But
Ooh, challenge.
I was teasing him.
I
Yeah,
want to see that matchup.
I do too. I would have been so interested to play that. Anyways, comes out. There's 3 people all vying for the lead spot. What's funny is Alex didn't even think you were gonna come close. Like he was like, oh yeah, he'll probably get third. It'll be either him or Christian. You jumped Alex
I did.
and you were tied with Patrick for the first. So obviously there's tiebreakers for direct matchup, victory points, victory point differential, all of that stuff, which
Yep. I
Patrick
think I
had
lost in. Yeah, Patrick had for sure.
because he had the direct matchup, he had victory point differential, and then he had like 4 total victory points more,
Yes.
which was interesting. So
So sad.
comes out Legions of Mordor, a list that everybody has been bagging on. And I have actually played quite a bit of it. Normally I play it with Gothmog and then a bunch of Easterlings and kite with it, with a bunch of
Yeah,
Easterling
because
bows and
they're
a troll with
crazy.
a throwing stone. It's fun
Okay.
though. It works. Don't judge. And then I also take Gothmog's Enforcer to get the marches so I can march everywhere. It's very fun.
Yeah.
But Legions of Mordor, who everybody seems to hate, comes in first. And then the Dragon Emperor of Rune comes in second.
Are Easterlings back?
That's my question. Are they back? Because
Yes.
on the Minds of Moria blog, I made a post back in what June, like right after the books, asking that same question. And that was before I played anything with the regular Easterling list. So I was like, oh, the regular Easterling list is better than the Dragon Emperor, which now I don't think I would agree with because I actually really like the Dragon Emperor. But I don't think they're bad.
Yeah. So I think for me, I was really worried. I almost played Alex the final round,
Yeah,
which I would have gotten
Alex's
destroyed.
list. Well, not necessarily. You'd have had to have a masterful game and have him
Yes.
not counter it
I
well.
I have a couple of ideas for that, but I think Mila specifically does not do well against Magic, which we saw in a couple matchups because between my 3 big heroes, I have 5 will total. And maybe resistant on the Dragon Emperor, which is nice. But between Wither Shamans and stuff, that was in there. But I think the Easterlings are very good, but I think they're run differently than they were last edition. And I talked about this during my list building. It's very hard to spam them, I think, at 800. At 650 or 700, I can see a list taking the Dragon Emperor and Rutabi, or the Dragon Emperor and 2 captains, maxing as many models as you can. You can do that. It is nowhere near effective as last edition because everything just went up so much in price and your bubbles got way smaller. So the way I ran this list at 800 was it was a hero hammer with pike supports. Like I tried to take advantage of all the army bonuses. And that's one thing I think is really important this edition is because everything's a legendary legion, you get special bonuses, take advantage of those special bonuses. Like just adding the Dragon Knight gave me another advantage of the reroll in the combat for that. It also gave me an advantage over pikes. That's why I took more pikes instead of anything else. I thought about taking more cataphracts, but the pikes were really useful. But I think specifically for Patrick's list, Amdur and the Witch King are a fantastic combo because I played I think 3 or 4 tournaments with the Witch King and like Marinans or the Witch King and Miss Morgul by himself. And he's a great piece, but where he struggles is being the only piece. And I think what Patrick's list does really well is it has Amdur, it has the Witch King, and it has Raza. All three have 3 attacks. All three have strikes. All three can in fact get up to fight 6 against in certain times for Raza. Bane of Kings, 5 up to wound, one's a monster. Very good heroes, and his troops can just defend well. I think in most of my matchups, the Eastlings now play similar to an Elven style list where you have these big heroes that will go and kill stuff, and your troops are there to hold space. Yes, they can kill stuff, but it really relies down on the skill of how you use those. But I do think Eastlings are good, especially at 800. I think that's the peak for the Dragon Emperor. I am tempted to run this list maybe at some other stuff, but I honestly would prefer regular Easterlings with Amdur at lower points values. But I think
I
Eastlings
I
are still
actually
good.
really love the Dragon Emperor at low points, where you take the Dragon Emperor and one captain and then just
Yes.
fill out the ranks of guys. I love that list.
I think
Um,
that list can do well. Yes.
I think it can do well because at low points, there's less things that take up space. So like getting the Emperor places is easier because it's not like you have 40 models to help clog up space, which I think is very useful. It's a nice tool,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, I mean, you hit all the bases with the Witch King on Felbeast, and as people hopefully will find out at Adepticon, he does that really well in other lists too. It's not just the Legions of Mordor
Yeah.
or Minas Morgul. But yes,
Which
I have brought backup pieces that are not mainstream media.
he needs support. Like the Witch King on
Yep.
Fellow Beast is awesome. He needs support. That's why I like taking him on a Fell Beast, but I think in Minas Morgul it might sometimes be a Fell Beast for that, but it might also be a horse, which is also why I'm sad. Like you can't take Gullivar and the Witch King anymore because it's really cool, but I feel like he plays a similar role, ironically enough, to Gandalf the White, where in Men of the West or in the list, Gandalf the White can be taken like atop the walls, etc. He's okay, but Gandalf and the Witch King both thrive when they are not your only piece. They're great support pieces, which sounds weird when you're talking about like 250 point models, but yes. Eastling Warriors, I like that they're fight for now. I You can spam out black dragons, but you can also not take any black dragons. I think the fight value is useful, obviously. And
Yeah.
they're only 1 more point expensive also for a better courage, so take a handful, but yeah, they're expensive now. One thing I kind of wanted to take are War Drakes. I didn't take because obviously I don't
Yeah.
necessarily have the model, but I played a couple practice games with them and they're really good. I really like some War Drakes, so it'd be fun to do that. Acolytes are again pretty good. There was something I was talking with Patrick about last edition. One of his friends took Emperor Rutabi and like 30 acolytes,
That's funny.
which just sounds scary. Obviously, you can't do that with
Last
the throwing
edition,
weapon.
yeah, last edition. Oh, yes. Well, Acolytes, I love Acolytes so much. Oh my word. I've been
Yes.
playing tons of Corsairs. We talked about my Umbar a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. Okay, yeah. I've also been playing Grand Army of the South. And this one time I randomly decided to substitute out the Umbar boys for 2 Dragon Knights and 2 full warbands of the Acolytes. And oh my word, they're so much better. Because you get the fight 5, 2 attacks with the same throwing weapons. Oh my gosh, and they're so good. They do so
They're
much
great.
damage.
I love
Like
them. My problem
they're
with
so
them
good.
is, at least at this list, a
In
lot of it,
Easterlings,
my
I know. Yeah.
troops. Yeah, I think in my list, like, my troops were there
In
to
yeah.
shield and hold space and not die. And the Acolytes had 2 attacks that didn't need to shield, but every time they would just, like, die. And it's like, dang it.
Yeah.
But again,
Yeah.
those jumping stuff,
Yeah.
ooh, I
In,
scaled Orthanc so fast.
And when you're in like a list like mine, where it's the Golden King of Abercon, a Haradrim Chieftain, or no, I took the Haradrim, the Golden
Taskmaster?
King. I took a Hasherin, a Taskmaster, and the two Black Dragons, the Dragon Knights, those guys, and then
Yes.
a whole bunch of Harad guys, and then all of these guys. And the great thing about it is because you're equal defense across the whole board, your acolytes aren't your weakness on defense. They're just like everybody else, which
Yeah,
is like that. That's the key difference. Is instead of having the D4 to D6, everybody's D4.
for sure. Yeah. No, I really like it. I think it is in a perfect spot where, for example, like the Dragon Emperor, he has 200 points, but if you take the Palanquin, 6-inch banner, reroll ones, gives him not ability to be knocked prone, extra strikes, but it's a big base. Like, I would cost it around 60 or 70 points. Like, even just on face value, you dismount from the Palanquin, that's 60 points in Black Dragons right there. And so if you look at the Dragon Emperor at 130, 140 points of a fight 7, 3/3/3 hero with a board wide standfast with resistance to magic and an Elven Blade, who's a hero of legend. Like he's still good value. If you raise him up in points, I think he
Yeah.
really loses that. So I think the Eastlings are in an awesome spot right now where they are a good list. They're nowhere near where they were last edition, and in each and every single one of my games, I had to work for everything. And like shout out to
Yes.
all of my opponents. I did not have a game where it was, oh, I can sit back and relax. Like every game, every movement was like pushed me to my limits. And I'm really thankful. And even like the games that I lost with Patrick, like I learned so much from that and just had an awesome time playing Easterlings. And I'm probably gonna mess around with some more hero stuff
So
in other lists with Fit 5.
what I'm hearing is that this is essentially for you what the Men of the West was for me. So last edition, I accepted a challenge because Andrew was tired of me beating him, and so he's like, "At our next big event, you need to run a list of my traits." I was like, "Okay, you choose. Pick the worst army in the game, and I'll run it. I promise." And he
Yeah.
just goes, "Okay," and it's like, "I'm gonna do Men of the West." And I was like, "Okay." Because pretty much the one thing was I was like, no Sharkies rogues. That's the only one that's off limits because I'm not going and buying 90 ruffians. And he's like, okay, that makes sense. And so he's like, you're running Men of the West. I was like, okay, well, this will be interesting. And so then I went and looked at the list and I was like, well,
The
I'll take
twins.
the twins, Aragorn, and Baragorn.
You're like going through and you're like, I can take all these heroes. Oh, look, what are the twins doing there with this giant light saying, "Take me"?
Yeah, they're
It's
great. In
they
last
were so good.
edition, nobody took them because you couldn't take warriors in their warband. It was great.
Yeah.
I love them. And then throughout what was it, 4 months of playing them, I played so many games. I got at least probably 40 games in with that
Oh,
one list.
100%.
Like I was playing so many games. Like I was normally playing like at least 2 games a week. And then while we were up in Oklahoma, we played a bunch.
I played
And
that list, so I got spanked so much. But that
you beat
Boromir and
that. Yep.
Reconnoiter,
You
yeah,
beat me once with it. But yeah, it is very, very interesting.
yeah,
And I think it taught me so much about the way I used and thought about heroes, and really more than that, thought about taking risks. Because that's
yeah.
something that I've really pushed is just take some risks. Like
hmm
even unless they're low might, I will randomly go and blow 4 of my 6 points of might on heroic combats just because it's like nobody expects it. And when you do something unexpected, they just have no idea how to react. And normally it takes a
Yes.
little bit of time to because they just don't see it coming. So I did love taking like your lists that are like Angmar focused, and you have like your host of the Witch King with the Witch King, like a random captain, or say what's the shadowy guy, the Shadow of Rudar,
Shadow of Rudar.
and two Barrow Wights. And I normally take a shade because I like the way they work now this edition. And then you just throw in the Shadow Rudar and the Witch King and call a combat with both of them. Nobody sees that coming because they're like, oh, you're just like a support heavy list. And then they'll go and kill 8 models in a turn. And you're just like, oh, they do that.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of techie tools. And it's just, I think the way people play lists can really surprise you. And so that's why when I saw Patrick submit his list, I was like, okay,
hmm
we've gotten out of Stater and he's running this list. This is going to be very fun to watch.
Yes.
Um,
And props to Patrick for winning the tournament. Like Yeah, it's Arizona and he won Texas. But I think you put that in the hands of 99% of people. They're not winning a tournament with that list. The way he
Yeah,
played that list was
yeah.
so good. Like,
Even getting above 50% on the win rate would be impressive for, I would say, the majority of players.
yeah. No, I'm very impressed there. And yeah, about like risks, that's something that I tried to do specifically in game one where I like saw Aragorn and I was like, why not? I'll
Yeah.
throw the Emperor into him.
I mean,
So
in that game, that's what you needed to turn the tide. That's one of the things I push a lot of people in. Sometime soon, we need to do an episode specifically on just tactics. I mean, we can
mhm.
go into like the Picard maneuver and stuff like that, but like even just the basics of like what is bait? How can you use bait? How can you manipulate it? And more than that, once you gain momentum, how can you use it effectively? And pretty much, I mean, how do you abuse the manipulation of maneuverability, the manipulation of tempo to your advantage.
Yeah.
Because when you're using heroic combats, you can use it to move again, you can use it to get another kill, you can use it to apply pressure. But what is the ultimate goal of that, and how can it be leveraged in the next turn? Like I'll reference back to one of my favorite moments at the Nova Open. It was game 4, my like personal favorite game, because I feel kind of bad for my opponent because I kind of handedly, I mean, I beat him 20-0, so yeah, I handedly beat him.
Yeah.
And it was just I set up, and this was one of the last moves. We were in Treasure Hoard, and Treasure Hoard is very hard to get a 20-0 in. You have to
Hmm.
have everything. You have to have models on their board side, keep none of theirs on yours. You
Yeah.
need to make sure there's no banners. And I was playing against Boromir, so he had banner. He had super solid defensive troops. I needed to break, quarter him, not be broken, get all 6 of these guys with the Lake Town army. But one of the things I did was I kept getting the tokens with Gwai here, and I was like, this is great. And then I did this fun play where I sacrificed Tariel to pretty much put Faramir in a position where Gwai here could eat him once he
Hmm.
was out of might for killing Tariel, which is great. Even though Tariel just rolled horribly because she had a higher fight value in all of those fights and then lost all of them and died. But I ran out of will early with Gandalf because I just threw so much pressure onto Boromir, which worked great because then I got to kill him super fast. But then I saw one thing that I needed to do to get the 20-0. And at this point, it was the 4th round. I had a draw to my name. I knew I needed to get 2 major wins to get up there. Sadly, I got a minor the next game, but I spent the next 3 turns doing strength and will on Gandalf because I saw what I needed to do. What I needed to do was on the final turn of the game, he was 2 models off quarter. I threw a Sorcerous Blast on his 1 Gondorian Ranger that had the objective, the last token. So I ran him 6 inches sideways through his 12-inch because he was 18 inches away from this one random dude. Through
Yeah.
the Sorcerous Blast, used my last might point to kill this random dude after throwing 4 will on the spell to get it off. Threw my might point into killing him. And then I had one random elf that could move 3 inches, pick it up, move like 2 inches backwards out of line of sight so he couldn't be charged.
Wow.
And it's just like those are the things, like it's very hard to learn how to see 3 turns in advance. But like over time, if you're just focusing on even seeing what you can do the next turn after a heroic combat, the next turn after calling this spell, after depleting their resources in this way, like you saw that with your games where you're like sitting there like, if I can get Birder down to 1 might, 2 might, I could keep him off the board.
Yeah.
He won't get off the board, right? And it's like those are the things you need to be thinking about in games because those are what ultimately win games. Like people all the time talk about, oh, in order to win a 6th round tournament, you need to have all the luck in the world. Trust, you need luck. Like
You
that
need some,
that's
yeah, for sure. Like
but
I
luck
I
goes
got
both
lucky in
ways.
some of my matchups.
Yeah.
Like not my matchups weren't easy, but I didn't hit a list like dragons or something that would be really, really hard to play against,
Yeah.
or Alex or something. So there is an aspect of luck. But
But at the
one,
same time, when you're playing into those armies, or like people say, oh, he won like the one roll off that gave him the win. Well, how many of the previous roll-offs did you win to get it into the position where that was the crucial roll-off? Like that's the thing. It's just like everybody will normally go like, oh, there was this one thing in this game that only this dice roll caused him to win the game. And sometimes there genuinely will be. Like in a contest of champions, a strike off can result in the game, right? Because
Yeah.
that just is the game. But in most scenarios, in most games, most armies, it won't be one roll. It will be a combination of 8 that leads up to the point where this one roll decides whether you win or
Hmm.
lose. And it's all dependent on that one. But the only reason you get in that position is because of the previous 8 that the other player wins, right? So there's those kind of things where it's like, yeah, there is luck, but luck goes both ways, and normally it does go both ways in every single game.
Yeah. And I think that's something I really loved with taking this is I had to think ahead. I had to plan ahead. I had to use my resources right. All of these things really came into play, and I feel like I'm not gonna look at another list. Like I really wanted to take AOL because I thought I would do really well with AOL, which I might have done. But what I learned from this list, not only by taking like my Easterlings, which I've wanted to take, and I painted up in purple, which look really cool. I really like that. I
I
might
love them.
send up some pictures in this podcast or something. But yeah, I'm super glad I took this, but it just gives me a whole new perspective. Like I feel like it's opened up to all of these different moves and counter moves and bait and even what you're talking about from like a heroic combat. Sometimes you see is I'm gonna call a combat to kill troops. Be like, no, I'm gonna call a combat to wall off this area so you can't get here. Like there's just so much depth to the game, and that I feel like this just really highlighted that fact because I had to use every small rule, every small tactic to try and buy back that advantage. So I really enjoy taking this. I might take Eastlings, probably not. I'm gonna try some other fun lists and stuff. So we'll see.
You've got enough armies to where you could just pull the classic, oh, I'll run the list that I've done well with and continue to play it well. Or you can do what I do, which is just never play the same list twice. I think at
Well,
tournaments, my entire tournament career, I've run one list twice, ever. Nope, I've done it
yeah.
twice. I did Angmar twice, totally completely different builds. And then I've
Oh
done
yes.
Hunter Orcs twice. One pure Hunter Orcs with a whole bunch of Warbats allied in, and then once Pits of Dol with entirely two-handed weapons.
Yes. I want to play out and branch into other armies. Like I've learned the Dragon Emperor and like I can still learn so much about it, but I want to play an
Yeah.
AOL or a Lothlorien or a Minas Tirith or all these stuff that I have painted up. So
Yeah. Yep.
speaking of painting, quick
Oh
update on
yeah.
painting comp, which yeah, I'm kind of killed at. Trey, so from we're gonna start update from when we originally did it to now. How many models have you painted slash based?
So
Painted and based,
with,
I should say.
with painted and based. So yesterday I told you I had 10 and my big model. I
Yes.
didn't finish basing all of them, so I only have 7 infantry models. So
Oh.
I finished up 7 of my, a few of them are Rangers of the North, a few of them are Hobbits for
Yeah.
my Battle of the Greenfields that I'm painting. And then for one of my Adepticon lists, I painted up my beautiful boy, my Fell Beast with the Witch King.
If
So that counts as 3 if we're following our dominant thing for
yes.
like the
Yep.
monsters and stuff. So 10 total.
Yeah, I got the Dragon Emperor, Brogear, 6 Dragon Knights, and I have not painted since the tournament. So last night I broke out like because I still have probably like 60 Eastlings I haven't painted. So I want to get all my Eastlings painted up because I'm taking another army to an event, so that'll motivate me to paint it. So I'm like halfway through 10 Eastlings, but I've really only done 8. So far you're in the lead, but right here in Dallas, we are snowed in, which is not something I normally say. So we'll see if school gets canceled for me, but it has upped a little bit, and a lot of my hobby time is going towards this. So I'm gonna try and get
Yep.
more painted, but so far Trey's in the lead, sadly. But his Witch King, ask him, comment if you want pictures of his Witch King because oh, it's so good.
We might be
But
able to throw up some pictures, just overlay while I talk about it, but we'll
yeah,
see what we can do. Otherwise, we'll just put them in the comments or something. But
yeah,
I'm very happy with my weird blue and brown Witch King on Fell Beast.
yeah, and that's something cool. Like I might post up some of my pictures of my purple Easterlings, which
Yeah,
were
are
super cool.
gorgeous.
So we'll
Yep.
see. Thank y'all for listening. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. This is going to be a longer episode, so it might not be out immediately. But again, thank you to all those who came down to TXO, who played me or played Trey.
Yep.
It's a really fun time. So I guess that's all.
See you all next time.